scene for a very, very long time. We've had a podcast before where we spoke about you. I'll remind people who you are. Mick is the owner of Versio and also the president of the Malta Esports Association. And today we'll be speaking mostly about the association, the local esports scene, and what's happening to benefit Malta regarding esports and gaming, mostly esports. So feel free to ask any questions in the chat. I already have a bunch of questions already. Obviously, we won't just stop and answer every question in the chat, but if I see that it suits what we're talking about, I'll ask it. If not, if it's a good question, I'll keep it on the side to ask it later. Basically, the way it's going to work is I already have a lot of questions. They're not single questions, they're more like segments where we can discuss things. In fact, I asked Mick to maybe bring a pen, so when I'm saying the whole list of things, he can maybe write some things down so he can answer them in his own time. But yes, then I also have a lot of questions from viewers. I just want to tell viewers that basically if you don't see your question come up, it's most probably because it was already going to be asked by my questions or it's part of my questions, because like I said, it's more like segments. How's it going, Mick? All good?
All good, all good. Yep, excited to put some light into what goes on behind the scenes.
Good. So let's first of all, let me tell people how this came up to be. So like I said, I've been wanting to do this again, and I'm always saying, how can I start doing this? Who am I going to start with? Lately, Mick spoke about MESA in this Discord channel, this community Discord channel, the Kazin, which there's the link in chat. Yes, official John posted the link, and basically a lot of people didn't know what MESA was, or maybe they knew what MESA was, but they didn't know what they do. And we realized maybe it's good if we talk about it, because it's an important part of, especially like multi-C sports, and it's really good that people would know what's going on and what your plans are. And basically, I gathered a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions myself about the current state of the scene in Malta. Most of these questions came up of basically when you're talking with other gamers, talking with other streamers, talking with other players, with other companies who are involved or would like to get involved in esports. And basically, there are quite a lot of questions from a lot of people. So would like to ask you some questions. So if you want, we can begin, Nick.
Yeah, let's also give thanks, because this technically started off from a very long discussion with Arko in the Kazin Discord.
He told me something.
And I bet he's not in the chat.
I'm actually quite surprised he's not in the chat, because he likes like local
drama.
No, I wouldn't. Drama, yes, but it's not drama what we're doing. Like,
it's more,
there he is. Yeah, so like I mentioned, like you'll be talking outside and you meet people. Like Ark was one of the people like that. Whenever like I had to meet him, even if I'll meet him once a year, the conversation always goes towards how can esports get better? What's the problem with esports in Malta? And there are a lot of people like Ark who have like very, very similar questions. So I'm happy you agreed to do it. I told you I'm going to ask you some hard questions. It's not like the last podcast where it's get to know Michele, you know? I personally genuinely have a lot of questions, which I'm hoping you can answer, because then again, like, you know, you don't know everything and you're not in control of everything esports in Malta. So let's hope we can get some more answers. And like I said, guys, leave your questions and I will try to address them at the right time. So before we start getting into some questions, can you give us a bit of an introduction? Maybe explain to people what the Malta Esports Association is, what you currently work on, maybe what the structure within MESA is, what your future goals, what you'd like to achieve. Like, give us a general explanation for especially people who have never heard of MESA in the first place. No, and some people don't know that there is a Malta Esports Association, and maybe the reason why it's not well known.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start from here. Kind of the first idea of MESA started around 2018, somewhere along those lines. Back then, there was quite a bit of movement in terms of, Eden Esports were doing quite big events. There was GMR doing the Malta Esports Festival. So there was quite a lot of activity going on. And back then, there was an initiative to create an esports association. I was involved to provide that association with some advice, but I wasn't directly involved. And unfortunately, after the launch event that happened in Monte Cristo somewhere around 2017, 2018, unfortunately, it seemed to die out, which was a pity because it had started gaining momentum and so on. That association was never officially formed. Although there was a launch event, it never took legal status. So maybe for people who are not aware, it's not enough that you create a Facebook page. It's not enough to have an organization. An organization needs to have legal status, needs to be formally registered, and there's a process to do that. There are different forms of legal entities that you can create. And eventually in 2021, right after COVID, also during a spike when there was quite a lot of activity, especially with the Level Academy events and PlayCon and so on, kind of this idea of having an esports association was rekindled, and it was recreated sometime in 2021, and it was officially launched in 2022, in May 2022. We had a launch event at the National Stadium. Quite a few of the people probably in chat were also in attendance back then. We had a minister giving an opening speech, the Minister of Sports, nonetheless, giving an opening speech. We had government officials. We had a lot of people from different parts of esports. We had ESL representatives there, and so on and so forth. And the Esports Association was formed. And back then, the people involved in the Esports Association were mostly companies. So you had entities like GMR, Eden Esports, Level Academy, World Pro Racing, and a few others, basically. But yes, it was mostly made up of companies involved in the sector, or companies or associations. Obviously, Aversio was also involved through myself. And the general idea, at least that I had back then, and the reason for the creation of the association was to do the complete opposite of what other entities were doing, right? The point of the association, and this I think is extremely important, is to only do those things that other entities could not do, right? Now, there are certain situations, certain things that there should be an entity that represents the whole sector that does, without being in competition with the rest of the companies. So a cardinal point of the Multi Sports Association was that it doesn't compete with its founders, right? So it doesn't compete to organize events. So if GMR is organizing a Counter-Strike event, we're not competing with them to organize another Counter-Strike event. If they have a sponsor, we're not competing with them to take their sponsor and take their funding. You know, the idea is to do only those things that they as GMR, they as World Pro Racing, they as Level Academy can't do, right? So that's the starting point, doing things that only an association can do. And that is acting as kind of like the body that unites everything related to esports under one roof. Now, one of the cardinal points that has been around esports for the past 3 years, and that we've struggled with a lot, is disagreements between entities, rivalries, different companies butting heads, and general lack of agreement between each other, Yobotol Shushin, stuff like that, right? What we're trying to do is create kind of like an entity where all of these different entities actually have a forum to speak, and then we can present basically our unified voice. There must be things that we all agree on that we need to do for the benefit of esports in Malta, right? That is the first point. Then there are other things that companies can't do. For example, having the national esports team, right? In order to have a national esports team, you need an entity that is independent, not affiliated, and so on, that decides on who is going to represent the country in official competitions abroad. Moreover, in order for you to be a part of these international competitions abroad, things like the World Esports Championship, the Global Esports Games, and so on and so forth, I'll speak about them a bit later, you need to be established as a non-profit organization, and you need to be a member of the International Esports Federation, or the Global Esports Federation, or the European Esports Federation, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that we actually did way back in 2020, because this esports association project had been long kind of in the making, was to become a member of these entities. And through that, we could create the national esports team, and through that, we could have representation in these World Esports Championships. Now, most of you who are esports enthusiasts say, yeah, what the hell is an World Esports Championship? Kind of, is it a Counter-Strike major? Is it this? Is it that? No, it's not that. It is essentially kind of a gathering of 140, 130 countries from around the world who compete in this IESF event or this Global Esports Federation events. And since 2021, we've managed to participate in quite a few. And the whole point there is to highlight the Maltese talent, to bring the Maltese talent to the fore, and get them to participate in international events, especially in stage events, right? If you're starting off as an esports player, most of the time you go to low-level events. You very rarely have the opportunity to play on a stage, very rarely have the opportunity to be, broadcast in a high-pressure environment, and so on and so forth. So we wanted to give this opportunity to the best players in Malta in those games that the International Esports Federation, the Global Esports Federation, actually offered competitions in, and give them the opportunity to play. So in 2021, we had Leonidas. We sent Leonidas to Israel, and when I say sent, it means through our membership with the ISF. Obviously, we needed to fulfill quite a number of conditions, including organizing local qualifiers. We could get full flights paid for and full accommodation paid for to send our representatives to these countries. So in 2021, we sent Leonidas to Israel. In 2022, we sent Ryukan for Tekken also to Azerbaijan, and then to the World Esports Championship in Bali. We sent a Counter-Strike team to Bali. We also sent an eFootball player to Birmingham for the Commonwealth Esports Championships, and these are all players who went there for free. They got the opportunity to represent Malta, but more than that, almost they got the opportunity to see what real esports is about. Most of these players had never been abroad on an international competition before. I think the only exception was Leonidas, who had been to quite a few before 2021, and probably Shaka from the Counter-Strike team, who had been to a couple of foreign lands before. Otherwise, for all of these other players, it was the first time. In the following years, in 2023, we went to Poland for the European Esports Championships, which was held in parallel to the European Olympics. So it was actually a pretty massive event. And also we sent an eFootball player and a Tekken player, Leonidas again, to. Oops, sorry for that. Yeah, I touched my camera. That's what happens. Let me try and fix that. Yeah, all right, should be back.
It's a pity that so much has been done, and like a lot of people have no idea that all this was done. But go ahead. I don't interrupt you.
Yeah. So that's on the national team front, right? So we attended quite a lot of events. I think the last thing I said before my camera went awry was eFootball and Tekken players to Romania. So in the 3 years of operations that we've had, 4 years, we've managed to do quite a lot with the national team, I think, and that's considering the lack of resources that we have, right? And then also, I think the other point that is really important, and probably I'd like to have most of this discussion surrounding it, is the things around esports that people don't see, right? Now, for most of us, especially maybe to people who are younger than we are, Locke, esports is mostly something that you do for fun, right? But and most of the time, you say, yeah, let's organize an esports event, let's do this, let's do that. Events come and go, and they're easily forgotten, right? What we want, us as the association, and the cardinal thing that we want, sorry, I keep repeating that word, and the one of the most important things that we want to do is create a structure that lasts. So look at the long-term vision for esports. Think of something long-term that we need to create and sustain in Malta. Just because we organize another event, that won't make a difference, because after 1 month we want another event, right? That's the nature of events. They pass, you forget about them, or maybe you remember them with photos, but that's it. They don't have a lasting impact. We want to make that lasting change. Now, that lasting change comes through change in policy, change in government policy, principally. Have things set up in Malta that would allow esports to thrive, to remain relevant, to have backbone, to have the infrastructure it needs to survive. And that, I think, is one of the most important things. It's also one of the hardest things to achieve, right? Because it's not like I can just phone up a prime minister and say, listen, prime minister, do this, this, and this, and we'll make it happen. And they will listen to what we think should happen. I mean, you have a very clear example of this with for example, the car enthusiasts in Malta, right? They've been calling for a racetrack for decades. And it's literally a national meme now. When this racetrack is coming, it's been an electoral pledge for so long, and there are way more car enthusiasts in Malta than there are esports enthusiasts in Malta. So it's even more. You can understand how difficult it is, right? And
But
once I start explaining what
it, you wouldn't agree with me there, because
you don't need as much investment
and space as that. So at least maybe there's that on our side. Sorry, go ahead.
But there's another thing. There's another part to it that we're not counting, right? Car associations. There are at least 3 on the island. They're very well organized, very well funded, very well resourced, and they have thousands of members, right? The Esports Association has no political clout. Why? Because there's 28 guys, all have their own interests, because all are part of their own kind of thing. All are either part of GMR or Level Academy or WPR or this or that. And mostly they look out for their own interests as opposed to the interest of the esports collective, potentially, right? I mean, if you're running a business, your first intention is to, get money to ultimately feed your family, right? And there's absolutely no blame in that. And that's how it will always be. But there needs to be an entity that looks out for the common good of esports in general. And that's where the Esports Association comes in. But our job, unfortunately, is to look at this long-term stuff that most people won't see. And I have a lot of examples to use. I have a lot of examples to give that I think give people the idea of what we've been doing behind the scenes. That's my introduction.
All right, good, very very good introduction. Like I said before, it's a bit sad that quite a lot has been done, and not only from the side of MESA getting any form of let's call it publicity, even the players. It's sad that I've been in the scene for so long. Sometimes I hear someone did something awesome, and they tell me a few years ago, and you're like, how isn't this news that's everywhere? But let's continue getting questions, because I'll start ranting and never stop. So you mentioned also the fact that the cars, for example, the car organizations have a lot of members. So I'm assuming the more members MESA have, the better. So one of the first questions is, can people sign up? Is there a fee to sign up? What do you get in return? What do people expect from MESA when they become members? Or what are the intentions? Maybe what are the plans to start signing people up?
So number of members, logically to me, it is important for it to be a large number of members, is that for an organization to have political clout, for it to have the strength to be able to represent the interests of a number of people, it needs the mass members, right? If you look at, for example, one of the most influential associations in the country, which is FKNK, the Association for Hunters and Trappers, they have around something like 40,000 members. Of course, if they go to the government and say, listen, we want this, the government has to listen, because there's 40,000 people behind that voice, right? But when it comes to the Esports Association, we don't have those numbers. Right now, we have 28 members. Those 28 members are formed part of our employees and individuals behind something like 10 companies, right? 10 companies or entities, which is very low. So essentially, we have no clout, very little clout to try and convince the powers that be to do something in our favor as an esports sector. Let's put it that way. Yes, people can become members. There are different membership types. There's like a fee for corporate members, so for companies essentially. There's a fee for entities that are just starting up and they're not fully realized perhaps and still need some time to become fully fledged companies, which is called the associate membership. So the corporate membership, the associate membership, and then there's the standard membership, which is for individuals. There are different pricings to them. The corporate membership one is 250 euros per year, and we have around 3 or 4 corporate members. Then there's associate members, that's 50 euros per year, and that's for entities or organizers that want to become members of MESA as a company rather than as individuals. And that would mean that oops, sorry, that's my son.
It's all right, don't worry. I know the feeling. I looked outside to see if it's mine.
Yeah. I feel like a bad father now. And there's the standard membership, right? So the standard membership is at 25 euros per person and per year, right? So around 3 euros per month, something like that. Less than a Twitch subscription. So what are the benefits? That's a good question. I think first of all, before speaking about the benefits, we need to speak about what we're trying to achieve, right? Which I already spoke about. So MES is a voluntary organization. The Multi-Sports Association is a voluntary organization that is trying to achieve certain outcomes with very limited to no resources. Now, the primary reason why people should join is because they can help out in this initiative. So if you love esports, if esports is something that you want to contribute to, you become members because you want to push for this further, right? Overall, there are a lot of things that in the process we want to provide as benefits, but that becomes kind of like a chicken and egg situation, right? First create the entity that will be in a position to provide the benefits, and then go for that. And I'll explain a few things of what we're looking at in the medium to long term as very, very significant benefits. One of them is, for example, the potential to be recognized as an esports athlete officially under Maltese law. If you're an athlete, you're subject to the different tax rate than standard employees, right? So if you make money from esports, and if esports is considered a sport, which is one of our goals according to the manifesto that we published in 2022, then you actually pay a much reduced tax rate than you otherwise would, right? So imagine that scenario.
That would be amazing. But would it be only on money you make through esports, or your tax bracket in general would be that way? You have to be full-time?
No, so you don't have to be full-time, no, but the money that you generate through esports, you would segregate it in your tax return. And this also applies for VAT, by the way, because sports activities also benefit from a reduced VAT rate.
Okay, that's in fact one of my main questions. If you don't mind, Firkas, we'll get to it a bit later, because I'd like to discuss the whole situation of an esport being a sport. Not discussing whether an esport should be a sport. I'm pretty sure every single person over here agrees it should be a sport, or maybe the majority. But the situation in Malta and how it's being handled or how it's being received. So I'll like to get to that. What I want to ask, actually, because speaking about numbers and trying to get numbers, so I completely agree with you that maybe people should join, not not because they say like, this is a good price for X. Maybe people should join because it's just helpful the same way people give money in church to try help whatever you believe in. Like you give money to esports, to the
If it
association.
helps, I can promise you won't go to heaven.
Yeah. No, but this is the thing. It's like, if it's true, if people just try to support it for the sake of supporting it, even if you're not an esports player, um, if these things get bigger, gaming in general will get bigger, more recognized, and more accepted in Malta. So it's helpful to everyone. So it leads perfect into my next question. It's the Malta Esports Association. Can things like community events, streamers, fall under the care of MESA? Like, would there be ways of helping out others, these other spaces in gaming, rather than just esports? Could there be like a subcategory that someone could take care of to? We're saying in a world where there'll be funds and all this stuff, would there be a possibility of MESA taking care of something which is not related directly to esports?
So esports is a very niche part of gaming, right? And the reason why I personally, at least, I can't speak maybe for the esports association here, but I personally went for esports is I'm primarily passionate about esports. I'm very passionate about video games. But the point that we're trying to do is to give the benefits of esports that other activities similar to esports, i.e. sports, already benefit from. So supporting video games is a very, very, very different endeavor to supporting esports, right? In the sense that, first of all, I don't think playing video games needs any support in general, because
No, it doesn't.
I would imagine 70%, 75% of the Maltese population play some form of video games, right? Whether it's on the phone or PC or PlayStation, whatever.
Let me make it easier for you though, because I didn't mean like supporting video games, because the threat would be insane. I mean like, because the thing about esports is it could be educational, it could create new skills, it could be parts of new jobs, and there are things like streaming which
Yeah.
lead on to these things too. So I'm talking about more about other jobs in the industry rather than promoting
Yes.
games. That's what I mean, overall. Like the people who invest time and money into something related to games, not just organizing tournaments or playing the games. I'm talking about like streams, mostly entertainment and stuff like that, which lead to esports, like
Yes.
observers and all these things. But is there a way
And
that
there's a
they
lot of
could cater?
interplay either way. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
that's what I mean. You could like scout these people to use, like we've done, for example. I get an example in MCL with Tefrite.
Yeah.
I saw him streaming. I know he likes CS. I know he likes the competitive games. He's good at all these five competitive games and Overwatch also. So, the guy knows the subject in general. He's a good talker. You know what I mean? He knows how to keep things going. He knows how to hype things up. So he was a perfect choice for us. He wasn't someone who was like someone who was maybe a trained observer and a caster like he was doing, but to us it was like the perfect pick. So I don't know if Mesa could do something to notice these people more.
Yeah. Listen, the broader we are, the better, obviously, to be able to capture more of an audience, so to speak, more of a following. However, at the same time, also, you have to consider what you're trying to achieve when you're trying to focus on something, right? So I think between streamers, for example, and esports, there's a huge amount of overlap that can benefit both, right? Especially, for example, on the education front, how to help people, understand how to use certain technologies and so on. I think that fits into the education front, and it's not even esports; it's whatever, production, engineering, broadcast, and all that stuff that we want to support. And if a TV show benefits because of it, even if it's unrelated to video games, then all the better, right? But we need to also, when an organization has very, very, very limited resources, and I want to stress on that kind of with what we're able to do, we need to focus on things that are achievable, and we need to have a specific target, right? Now, speaking personally, as a person who has never streamed, for example, right? I know what I want to aim for esports, because I know the sector well. I've been in it for a very long time, and I know what I want to achieve, and I have a vision for it, right? I don't necessarily have the same vision for other sectors because I don't understand them as well. Now, in the future, that can always expand, especially, and mind you, the Esports Association is a democratic institution. Every I believe 4 years or 3 years, there's an election, or maybe even 2 years. I can't remember offhand, but there's an election.
Okay.
And you can have a different president, a different vice president, different secretary, and so on and so forth, different leadership completely. So it's a question of what you want your priorities to be, what you can focus on, what you have the capabilities of focusing on, and ultimately what you want to achieve. And realistically, right, if you open a coffee shop and you haven't managed to turn it into a successful coffee shop, right? Just because you start trying to sell juices as well won't necessarily make you a successful coffee shop just because you've added a product. In an ideal scenario, you do your core thing well first, and then you expand further. There's a similar argument, for example, in tennis and padel, right? The tennis federation, international tennis federation, ignored padel for a very long period of time, and then, now that padel is massive, they're trying to claw into it. It's actually also the exact same thing in the dancing federation, right? You saw breakdancing in the Olympics. There's a very interesting story about that. The only reason there's breakdancing in the Olympics is because the ballroom dancing federation wanted an activity in the Olympics, because Olympics obviously generates a lot of revenue, right? So they started doing breakdancing, and they managed to get breakdancing. The Ballroom Federation got breakdancing into the Olympics. That's how ridiculous the situation is. But I do, maybe this is my character, and maybe my successor will be better than me, but I do want to focus on realistic goals that can be achieved, and very specific goals. And this is why, for example, when even on the Discord channel we're discussing about events and so on, I would love to have the resources to organize events. I would love to have the resources to be able to do community events, streamer events, anything, right? Any sort of activity is good, right? It generates interest, but the question is, what can you focus on? In the sense that with the people that you have and with the resources that you have, right? This is not an organization with employees. This is not an organization with people working full time on it. It's voluntary people, and in this case, currently, the irony is that all of the people involved in it have some other involvement in esports already.
Yes.
So if you tell me, listen, why doesn't the Esports Association organize Counter-Strike tournaments? It's so important to have Counter-Strike tournaments. If it were important to have Counter-Strike tournaments, or not important, it's not important is the right word, doable, let's call it that way, probably one of the 5 member organizations that organize tournaments that are part of MESA would have organized them already.
True.
So, so again, we go back to the original point that we, as an association, are trying to do the things that other people can't do, or would never be in a position to do, because the association has a unique character as opposed to everyone else. If you tell me community events, I'm going to be honest. If I want to be selfish, I would say if I had the time and the effort and the energy to do community events, I would do them for Reversio rather than the Esports Association, so that I grow my own personal thing more than I grow the association ultimately, because it's in my interest. But you understand the thing, like if we had the volunteers and the people and the effort and the community to do that, it would be amazing. But we're not there yet. But we need to understand it's only been 3 years also.
Yes, it's true. Still young. And apart from like regulation and stuff like that, though, is it in any way or form like the duty of MESA to like create grassroots tournaments, or is it their duty to help companies create grassroots tournaments? What's the connection?
We started off with the idea that we shouldn't organize events because our member companies organize events. That was the starting point. Now the reality of today is that no one is organizing events, or very few events are being organized. So that changes the dynamic slightly, right?
Yes.
So that needs to have a bit of a rethink.
Exactly.
Secondly, it's one thing saying who organizes the events, and then there's the second part, which is what structure should the events have, right? And what regulations should apply to the events. For example, during one of the biggest esports events in Malta, there was someone who tried to take a device with cheats on it, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
Who should be the entity that decides what happens with that with that thing?
In our case, the owners of the event, but I know exactly what you mean. Yes, there should be like a body that decides anyone who gets caught with these types of cheating is not allowed in tournaments for X amount of years. There should be a governing body. I agree 100%.
Now, a governing body can't be motivated by profit, because we see
No.
what governing bodies motivated by profit result in. They result in FIFA, for example, that is accused of major corruption scandals and so on and so forth. And they don't really aren't really an organization to aspire to, at least in its current state, right? But that's one example. In that specific case that happened in Malta, the organizer at that point in time said, I don't want to kick this guy out because it would create a lot of drama. It would look bad on me. There are his parents around the corner, and they let him play anyway, which was
I
absolutely
don't
ridiculous.
understand the reasoning, but to make them look bad, the parents should be angry at the kids for trying to fucking cheat, and they should thank them for telling them that their kid's cheating. Because I'm pretty sure when they go home, their dad would tell him something like, I spent all this money on you, and you're cheating. Like, what the hell? As in, if you found your kid cheating in a test, you would get disappointed. You know what I mean? You'd be like study, like so. I would see it the same way. So I don't see any shame in it. And see, I think that the more lenient you are, the bigger the fucking problem becomes. As soon as some rules get put down and people can't do certain things, then people will get scared of cheating. All right, people are gonna try hide it more. It's true, but people will get scared. And if people know that if you're caught cheating, you get banned for a certain amount of years. If someone knows you're cheating, they will tell on you because they know there are repercussions. So it will always be helpful. And from Academy's times, we always believed in this thing that if someone is caught cheating, they just can't compete. It's quite obvious.
And it's not just cheating; it's also cyberbullying. It's also so
Everything.
many other things, physical
Everything,
violence.
exactly.
There's a lot of things that goes
The
into it.
same bans you would get in traditional sports, you should get them. Full stop. If
Yeah.
you're a player who's caught fighting and you beat someone up, no, you're kind of like a public figure. You get punished even
Yes.
in your game for it. So no, I completely agree with you. I completely agree that things need to be stricter. It will fall into one of the questions in Fatih about maybe this generation isn't getting anything strict and maybe that's why things change so much. But let's go on to some other questions. So the next thing I want to discuss is based around sponsorships. By the way, if you had anything else to say, tell me because I just jumped onto the next question.
No, and maybe one thing, and related very much to your next question, that we also want to look at and what we're trying to influence in some way is when I spoke about structure of tournaments. Right now, you could have one massive tournament a year and then nothing else throughout the
Yeah,
year.
exactly.
That is bad for the ecosystem.
Makes no sense.
You could have one event with a massive budget, and then every other event, like a massive event, a massive tournament for one game with a massive budget, and then other games get zero budget. Right?
Yes, I am going
That
to.
is problematic
I'm going
for
I'm
the
going to
ecosystem.
ask quite a few questions in detail about that, to be honest, because it's something that frustrates me personally and it frustrates quite a lot of people. So, in fact, I want to get sponsorships out of the way because I'm not talking about funds. I'm actually talking about getting sponsors. And the reason I want to get it out of the way now is because most of the other questions are about funds and stuff like that because, as you know, in Malta, almost everyone has to work with funds. We know how many sports players they're not getting money from entry fees, you know what I mean? So there must be sponsorships and funds which are involved, sorry. So let's get sponsorships a bit out of the way. It's not a long question. So I know it's a horrible thing to like have the idea of I will depend on funding to run anything. You know what I mean? You can't depend on funding to run anything. You have to depend on funding to try build something up till you can sustain yourself. But in a place like Malta, allow it a tiny population. Adna lura. You know, as in a lot of things are like really like the stigma on gaming is really bad. It's still really bad. Um, what advice do you have for people searching for sponsors? Because you know how it is with getting sponsors. It's really difficult. Like most people don't understand what esports even is. Most people look at you funny when you tell them like people look at other people playing games. It's like it's something new. COVID changed it a bit. A lot of people learned, but still, there's it's too
The reality
it's like
is
we're too
that
outdated. So, is there any possibility of anyone even succeeding without getting funds in Malta?
the problem is not in esports in this case. The problem is in the budgets that local companies have to sell to the local audience. That's so everyone struggles with sponsorships. It's not esports companies that struggle with sponsorships. It's everything from TV shows to radio to maybe the only things that don't struggle that much are like music events and mass events
No, they struggle unless they're giant
well,
or mainstream. They
yeah,
struggle, they
exactly.
struggle.
Exactly. And anyway, if you see all of the major music events in the country, they're all funded by government.
And
Like okay,
or all
you
the
could
same
get
sponsors.
yeah, you could get like massive bands and massive singers, and they still have most of their funds coming from government, including, for example, I Love MTV.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's free. But let's say the Maltese tenor, Kaleya,
Yeah.
you know, like realistically, if he needs government sponsorship, government funding, because he can't do it with just private sponsorship and entry fees, how the hell do you think that esports is going to do it?
I don't wait. I know what you're getting at, and I agree with you. But I don't think that he doesn't do it because he can't. I think he knows that he can tap into funds and he can get them because he's big. Because unfortunately, this is the way I see it.
Yeah,
For
but
most
then it's
scenes, if you're mainstream, if you're big, people are willing to actually pay. But no one looks at the young guy. No one looks at the guy who's still growing. So a lot of these young companies get eaten up in every business. I know what you mean, Jafiri, but no, it's
I know, for
unfortunate.
example, a friend of mine was involved in one of the most popular bands in the country, right? Extremely popular band.
Hmm.
And they managed to land a sponsorship from very famous sunglasses brand. And they got something like each one got a pair of sunglasses. That was the sponsorship. And this is one of the biggest bands in the country.
But what is it? Bad managers, man. What is it? Because
No, it's the reality is I know the marketing managers of some of the biggest brands in Malta. When I speak to them and I ask them what their budget is, it's laughable. Imagine one of the biggest restaurant chains in Malta, and you know that their yearly budget for marketing is 40,000 euros. Forty
but
thousand
this is
euros.
private, you're saying, right?
Private, yes. One of the biggest restaurant chains in Malta. And I mean chains, not a single restaurant, right? 40,000 euros. What are you going to do with 40,000 euros? If you do a television ad, right, with production and everything, you're already half of it is already away, and then you have a billboard, maybe a couple of billboards, and your 40,000 euros is up.
So,
And then, honestly, even if you give bloody 500 euros for esports, if you took that 500 euros and put it into a Facebook boost or a Twitter boost
yeah, you get
or
nothing.
Instagram boost, you already get way more value. So you're in.
And you still don't get a lot of the 500 bulls, believe
So
me.
the truth is, sponsorship right now is extremely bad across the board because you have social media advertising that is very strong, right?
Hmm.
And SEO advertising also very strong. So with much less money, you can do a lot more, right?
True.
So with a 100 euro Facebook boost, you will get a lot more viewers than or eyeballs, let's put it that way,
Then a
than
billboard.
sponsoring
Even then a billboard.
most. Yeah.
No, it's true. It's true.
So that's the reality, and then you have influencer advertising as well. With an influencer,
Yeah.
you give an influencer 200 euros, and yes, some influencers in Malta are extremely popular, especially with how popular TikTok is in Malta, and what it generates and its algorithms and whatnot. So a TikTok, which is very extremely low effort
Is
production,
that?
you pay 250 euros to a creator. I think the going rate for big creators in Malta sometimes is 400 euros per
post.
10-second clip, right? And on that 10-second clip, they get, I don't know, 20,000 views. If I do it on an esports event, there's no way in hell I'm getting
No,
20,000
they
views.
don't exist.
And ironically, with 400 euros, I do nothing.
Yeah,
So,
true.
and then you have the prices of things. Like nowadays, everything costs a ridiculous amount of money, especially renting out places, if you're organizing
Yeah,
a
it's
LAN, a
crazy.
generator, everything. It's just all of the cards are stacked against us. That's the reality when it comes to sponsorship.
True. Okay. Good. You made it very clear, right? So let's get into the next one. So over here, it's a long one, Mick. So bear with me, and
I have my pen.
yes, if you can. So again, we'll go to funds. It's like we just spoke about it now. Basically, it's almost impossible to get sponsors in all cases, not just in esports, but in esports it's even harder. So this question is mainly about like government. So I know you're not a minister. I know that you might
wish I
not
was a
know.
minister.
What's that?
You wish I was a minister.
No, so I wouldn't like know if you know certain answers, but I don't want to put you on the spot either. But I'm going to ask certain questions anyway because I'm
go ahead.
curious.
Go ahead.
So let's start off with here. Like I've heard the minister and the government in general say things like they have a goal of creating 3,000 jobs in esports and gaming, not betting, esports and gaming. Like, no,
Esports and video games.
yeah, as in, with all the respect, anyone who has any big involvement in esports kind of laughed at that. 3,000 jobs is a lot. And if you're trying to do things in esports, you understand how no jobs are being created, and there's no even if you present things to create jobs, they don't even help you create the jobs. So this is basically the question. In Malta, we have ESL, we have PlayCon at Eden Arena.
No, he's got a point.
I haven't, sorry, the the bits. We have ESL, we have PlayCon, we have Eden Arena. I haven't seen them in a while actually, but they're all big, nice, fun, entertaining events, which are also important, but something very big is missing, obviously. So my question is, why are there only 3 companies in Malta who clearly have tons of support to produce these professional events? 2 of them are local, one of them isn't, it's ESL. So let's not talk about ESL, it goes down to 2 companies. We know the esports scene well. We know you don't make this money from entry fees. You don't build PlayCon from the entry fees of anything you're doing throughout the whole year. It doesn't matter how good you are. So obviously there is help. Some numbers came out lately. I was really impressed. So it baffles me a bit on why there is a support to 2 companies to do a lot. And like I'm saying, no shame to them. If someone offered me that type of support, I'll take it and I'll try to do an amazing event with it. But if there is support for things like this, why on earth isn't there support for the smaller businesses if the goal in Malta is to start opening up businesses in esports and stuff like that? So where are these important events? Isn't the goal to build a community in Malta and have enough people interested to start maybe taking careers in esports and can fill out these jobs that maybe eventually will be produced? I don't know how. And where are the regular events? Where is the experience? Where is the awareness from the people who are proposing these jobs to try to do these grassroots events? It's very clear how things work to build grassroots events. I want to go into that even in detail later. But how can someone propose the amount of 3,000 jobs when we don't have a healthy esports scene in Malta? So where are the jobs coming from? Again, if you know, because like I said, you're not the minister, but maybe since I would assume MESAs could be first in contact with the government. Where are these jobs coming from? Who is going to wear these jobs? Is this something that jobs will be created by locals? They'll help them support their businesses so eventually they can employ people. Is this something that's going to be through different sectors of it, like education, different sectors of esports? Is this going to be like other industries we have in Malta, like get foreigners to work, for example, the catering industry. What is it? Is it going to be for locals, these jobs? Is it going to be a giant company that comes here with already 1,000 employees and that's 1,000 of the jobs? I find it very hard to wrap my head around where these jobs are going to come from and what they are, because there is a giant lack of support in total. So do you happen to know what we're talking about when we're saying all these jobs? And do you mostly have any idea why we help the large companies, but we do not help the small companies? And is there something MESA can do about it? Sorry
right.
for the million questions, Mick. I'm going to give it to you in segments because this is a lot of thoughts that
Yeah.
you have discussions
No,
with people,
I
getting
have it written
questions
down.
together.
I have it written down.
Cheers. If you need me to repeat anything, just tell me and I'll repeat.
Let's break it down a bit, because to be honest, I want to start with one thing, right?
Mhm.
I don't know how much of delay there is on the stream, but
4 seconds, I
can
think.
someone at 40 seconds?
4 seconds.
4, okay. Like, can the people in chat try and guess what the esports budget of the government of Malta is per year? How much money the government spends on esports?
How much the budget is or how much they actually spend? Does it make a difference?
The budget, how much they think the government spends on esports.
Okay, so with the stuff you see happening, which is esports related in Malta, how much would you think the budget is basically?
Yeah.
Like give us like realistic numbers. Like don't do it to joke around because we won't know if you're joking or not. So what do you think the real numbers are?
So from we can see a zero from Leonidas.
100K,
100K
10K.
Mocha, 25K Bungie, 20K Bino, 5 million Jan, 2 million Varsal, 3 to 4 million T Spark, Awaken 20K, Eglos 600K, Arco 200 to 300K, Jake Miff 50K. I had to struggle not to say Jake Milf.
You said it anyway now.
The closest guy is Varsal. Congratulations. This is public information.
So I saw these figures lately, Mick. So 2 million a year to help esports grow.
Yeah.
Let me try say it in the nicest way. Where do these 2 million euros go, which is helping esports? Is it just paying for the big stuff and that all costs 2 million? So you put ESL, Playcon and Chismo together and it becomes 2 million and there's nothing left for anyone, or there's a bit left for other people? Because I'll talk about it later. We got funds at Level Academy, small funds, nothing compared to obviously what these people are like crumbs compared to it. But like, if there is 2 million to help esports, why isn't esports growing? What's going on? Like, what's the deal with this? Because it's quite strange.
That's a good way of putting it, and that's why one of the things that we've been trying to act on the most as the Esports Association is that if the government is being so gracious and so helpful in distributing such an enormous sum of money, because it is enormous, to our hobby and to something that we're so passionate about, we would love to see it distributed in a way that benefits most the community. Now, the reality is that the government obviously doesn't necessarily, its intentions do not necessarily align with our desires, right? So obviously one of the key parts of the government strategy is to attract esports tourism, for example, and that was the reason why obviously the biggest part of the investment was obviously to have the ESL Pro League in Malta, which to any Counter-Strike fans in Malta, that is kind of, a dream come true. We've had, Simple and all of the Counter-Strike stars in Malta for the past 2 years. And there's a massive benefit in that. But if you're willing to spend that much, can't we spare a much smaller amount to maybe help our local ecosystem? And that is where.
Let me give you a small question in there. The things you mentioned are not helping esports in Malta, and they're not bringing tourism to Malta.
Yeah, but that's why
you think ESL is getting tourists here.
This is not my strategy, right? This is the
No, but
government
I'm
strategy.
honestly asking you, like, and even me, I don't know. I'm giving you my honest opinion. I might be completely wrong. I'm ignorant maybe on this subject, but I don't see anyone coming to Malta because of esports. I see our advert on the Twitch channel, which is cool, but does that actually translate to tourism?
It's actually impossible to calculate because you have no idea how many the people who. So it's essentially the equivalent of you sponsoring a program on the BBC, right?
Yeah, you
People
don't
are
know.
seeing it. How many are being translated into tourists for the country? You never know, because it's not like when you're on the plane you ask, where did you find out about Malta? I found it out through
But do
the
you
ESL
believe, Mick,
stream.
that having an advert of Malta on ESL is actually bringing tourists to Malta? I personally don't believe it. Maybe some
I
might
have
see
my
the
doubts.
advert and say that's really cool, but it's not like
What
I'm
I can
sure that Ed
say,
Sheeran brought more people than ESL brought in total, as long as they've been in Malta. Him on his own brought more people from Italy alone, maybe, because he's a big, you know what I mean? So I might be wrong, like I'm saying, I don't know, but I have a feeling that no, it doesn't bring that type of tourism. As in, it's not worth, I don't know how much of it is going to ESL, but I don't know if it's not helping the local esports scene and it's not helping with tourism through esports. I don't think the money is being spent well. I'm saying,
this
I don't
is
know, but would you agree? Would you think like I'm missing something?
I don't think it generates the employment that we're expecting to generate, and I don't think it's seeing a massive rise in tourist numbers. Also, because at the ASL Pro League, there's space for 200 people,
Exactly.
and so the amount of people actually visiting is limited. Now, of course, there's already there's other benefits that the country gets, including the fact that first of all you have a massive production, all based in Malta for a whole month of the year, right? Or actually 2 months of the year, and you have and realistically, esport advertising through esports is still much cheaper on an international scale than advertising with Manchester United. Let's look at another kind of thing that Malta advertises tourism with, right? The benefit that you get, the eyeballs that you get for sponsoring an ESL Pro League versus what you get for maybe having a logo somewhere on the stadium of Manchester United. In esports is much better. There's better integrations. During the ESL Pro League, you could see all the beauty shots of Malta and so on and so forth. So maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I'm not educated enough to make that guess.
So
right?
maybe compared to major
But
sponsorships, it actually makes
yes,
it's worth.
yes, and let's face it. I know for a fact that, for example, Intercontinental Hotel was fully blocked out for 2 whole months of the year. So in terms of hotels, I think they were seeing the benefits, right? Now, however, this was our proposal. We said, okay, so the government wants to bring something amazing like the ESL Pro League. We can't fault it for investing money into esports. And I can't, as an esports fan, I can't in good conscience tell my government off for sponsoring the ESL Pro League.
No, that's fine. Wait, I'm going to interrupt you for a second. From my end, not at all. I work with ESL, so to me, they've given me actual jobs. So I love that ESL are in Malta. So I hope no one gets me wrong. I'm like extremely happy. I love Counter-Strike. I get to do work for them. Unfortunately, I couldn't this year because I was abroad. So no, I love the idea, but I know that 2 or 3 people get employed with them. So that's my honest question is, like, for example, why aren't more? It's another question I have to ask. Like,
all 4 of them are in chat also.
But I'm pretty sure, yes. That's what I mean. So like I would love it if I would see more locals working there. I'm not like shitting on them in any way or form. And any of the other companies, like I said, if someone offered me those types of contracts to create something so big, I would be stupid not to take it. The question is like the young guy, where they help they?
Wait a second, because I want to say kind of what we suggested and what our role was in the Esports Association, what our vision was for this, right? Because the way we saw it is that it's amazing that there's the ESL Pro League in Malta, but how can we benefit from it? One of the main ways to benefit from that is that it can be an extremely good catalyst launch point to have esports business look into Malta and why they should move to Malta. That was what our proposal was. So actually, we drafted a proposal to the government that said, listen, if you look at, for example, the tax benefits that gaming companies get in Malta, the the things that basically esports business wants to be able to survive. For example, esports visa, right? The ability to go to European tournaments without being blocked at the border, which happens a lot to, for example, Turkish, Brazilian, Chinese players. These things, you look at the needs of esports business and you say, okay, so this Brazilian team would make sense, would find it good to relocate to Malta or have part of its business in Malta. This Chinese team, this maybe French team, if they establish in Malta instead of in France, they pay less tax, so it's more beneficial for them to be based in Malta, right? And we presented a number of proposals to the government that would essentially make it better for these companies to establish themselves in a country. So sort of imagine a country that is telling esports business, listen, I'm ready to fix my laws so that you can come to my country and have the best infrastructure possible because my laws are catered for esports. Imagine that scenario, right? Who wouldn't want to do that? Now, one of the major challenges, at least, is that unfortunately most of esports companies are loss-making. Fnatic, G2, and so on. Most of them are loss-making. So you can't really get them through tax benefits. But there are, for example, the players themselves can benefit from tax benefits because they do get a lot of money. So what if the tax rate for players, for them to be based in Malta at least a few times a year, would make it beneficial for them? They would move to Malta, and then the country starts making money, and that would lead to the 3,000 employment figure that the government is aiming for. They won't reach 3,000, but let's say they reach 100, right? That's already a start. It's already better than what we currently have. And in fact, for maybe a few people don't know, I think despite this not happening, despite Malta not changing its laws as we proposed, so that foreign esports companies can base themselves here, we did see Furia opening 2 houses in Malta at this stage. And there's another Asian esports company, very big esports company, that opened up offices recently. They probably will announce it during PlayCon. So the proof of concept works.
No,
It's
so
just that
ESL
we didn't
work.
follow through. We didn't
Wait,
follow through with the proposal.
so 2 questions. One, why was the proposal shut down? Because it's a good proposal. And 2, from what you're telling me, I am seeing a benefit from, for example, ESL now, but because I'm looking at it from a different lens. So the way
It wasn't shut down.
it,
It was just never implemented. It wasn't shut down.
all right,
Actually, we could never get, apart from Gaming Malta that does listen to us, we could never go beyond Gaming Malta to discuss at a higher level, kind of, listen, this is what needs to be done.
I see, all right.
Yeah.
No, so there is benefit from it, and I'm looking at it from a different lens. Because before I was seeing it as money for esports, and I'm thinking about locals getting into esports. So the way I'm looking at it now is how can esports generate money for the country, which is a very different way of looking at it. So in that case, yes, something like ESL.
But if, for example, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this, but there's a very big Berlin-based team, right? I'll leave it up to your imagination. That was speaking to the government to see what benefits they could get, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, there were no benefits that the government could give them because they didn't work on it. So, in my view, that part, at least, what we proposed, and which we proposed somewhere around 2020, right, was a missed opportunity.
Okay.
And I think it would have gone at least some way to reach the 3,000 employee goal. Maybe I would imagine more towards 100 rather than 3,000. But it's a start, and I think Furia was a very good proof of concept. And this other esports company whose Counter-Strike team is currently in Malta right now, actually playing, would also, it shows that it can work. But you need to have a holistic strategy, and that I think is one of the lack of. I mean, it's something that currently has not been implemented. That I don't think there is a holistic strategy for it, at least in my view.
And there's no way to calculate the benefits from the advertising it through ESL. But I
No,
do
not
get it.
really.
I do see it a bit
You
differently
can
now.
calculate. You can calculate the spend equivalent. So there is a formula that you can calculate this much. This is how many people saw the advert. This is the audience that saw it. There were X people from UK, X people from the US, X
Okay.
people from Brazil. Normally, if you did this on TV, it would cost that much. But because you did it on esports, it costs this much. That we know that it was value for money, right?
All right.
But what it's resulting in terms of esports tourism, I don't think anyone can actually say for
As
sure.
in, I don't know what the costs are into and hosting ESL. I'm pretty sure it's in the millions because it's ESL we're talking about. And like I said, I work for them. Beautiful, amazing professional production. And also, it's nice seeing Gaming Malta. I know it's not an advert for Malta as such, but it's nice seeing something that supports local esports on a Twitch screen when it comes to ESL also, because, like I said, they have also helped us. So I do see it a bit different now that you're putting it that way, that yes, they have brought tourism through esports. It's not necessarily how are the local players benefiting from it or the local scene benefiting
No.
from it. It's how can you generate that sort of money.
And we've seen this work before, right? And that's how iGaming started, and that's how iGaming works in Malta. And there's something like 12,000 people working in iGaming right now.
Yes, in iGaming for sure.
So it's possible, but you need a strategy behind it.
But
And
that's why I'm
this
asking,
is my
because
main job,
it's
by the way. In iGaming, I was one of the authors of the law that resulted in the economy that we have today for iGaming. So I have an idea of how to get to that stage, and it's a pity that I think we had the opportunity to do that, and we don't. And by the way, the contract with ESL was a 3-year contract, so
all
that
right.
is over.
No, but good. I'm happy you're saying that because we all want to basically see Malta benefit from esports. So the goal of this podcast at the end of the day is for people to know exactly how maybe this could be pushed forward and we could get more help in general. So let me jump on to the next one. Ash.
Actually, but there are the hot part of the question.
Yes, actually, wait, Ash, I'm seeing
I
the
didn't reply
second
to.
part of it. Yes, please, go ahead.
So, that is another thing that we as an association try to influence, a more equitable and more transparent distribution of funds. We've made various proposals. Unfortunately, none of them have yet come through. But you can only try, and you just can't give up. So the reality is that obviously, if you want to do something like PlayCon, if you want to do something like CCT and the Supernova Cups, international events that get professional teams, that costs obviously that costs hundreds of thousands of euros. Our point is, listen, if you're willing to spend hundreds of thousands, don't forget the local ecosystem. And to be fair to the government, they didn't completely forget about the local ecosystem. They did finance some of it. But what we said, by the way back in 2022 when we published our manifesto, was that, listen, what we need is consistency and sustainability. So it's not enough that you give me 5,000 euros in 2020, but then you stop giving me anything, because then I can't bring out a consistent result. I can't do one event per year and expect an ecosystem to thrive. I need to have at least 2-3 events per year for different games. So that is one of the things that we really tried to propose. And what we proposed, for example, was diversification in events. Don't just focus on tournaments, focus on community events. We suggested things like workshops, meetups, so funding for these activities. We suggested that there would be funding for the way funding for competitions is structured is that first of all, you choose a select number of games, right? For example, but don't choose 2 games, choose 5-6 games, and depending on the size of the community, potentially attribute a certain number of funding to those events, and then have different categories of events. Have like major events that you have 2 of every year, and then maybe spread out throughout the year you have small events, like what Level Academy used to organize, like a 1 day or 2 day event, stuff like that. Have things like LANs and get-togethers, like 3-day events and community building events. So we kind of like told the government, listen, if you have 100% of your esports budget, and let's say ultimately your main goal is to organize international tournaments because esports tourism and so on is your goal. All right, attribute 90% of the budget towards that, and leave 10% for the rest. Now, if you want to do like a major event like PlayCon, all right, take 5% or 8%. Just give us that 2%. Give it to us, and give it to us every year, and we'll figure it out. Right? That is enough, in my view, to have something at least sustainable that goes on throughout the year, and that you're able to organize something. If you commercialize it too much, you're going to get ruined, because the more mouths have to eat from that thing, the worse it becomes. The moment you put in too much money into something, you ruin it, in my view.
Yes.
The truth is, the esports in Malta especially is extremely small. Don't throw massive amounts of money at it, because people are going to people are going to expect that they have the €1,000 prize pools and the professional casters and this and that. Just give me enough, because esports in Malta is not profitable and never will be profitable. Just give me enough to be able to sustain something. Maybe I pay a caster, maybe I pay the venue fee, and I'm good. Exactly. You don't need to make a massive event, just enough for us to have a sustainable community.
Yes.
We also suggested things like, for example, something like a scholarship, akin to a scholarship for like people who have achieved something throughout their esports career, so to speak, and want to go pro for a year, for example, right? Like a stipend that the government gives you, so that throughout that 1 year period while you're trying to go pro, you get some funds, or funds related to, for example, to help you to compete in international tournaments, traveling, and flights and so on. What we suggested was that, like someone who applies for that presents his receipts, plane tickets, whatever, and they get a refund for that, something of the sort, right? Obviously capped, so that it's not like you can tour around the world for free on the government's dime.
No,
but say, listen, you're going to have a budget of €2,000. So someone who applies for it and has certain qualifications is not just any Tom, Dick, and Harry who can try to do this.
Someone like
but people with
for example.
Yeah, and other people like him, mind you. There's so many good people in esports in Malta that most people don't know about.
Exactly, that's what I was saying before. There needs to be more coverage of it, and the more people get sent abroad, the more incentive it is to build the sort of esports community, not just the gaming community, more the esports one, where people are actually competing. In fact, a lot of what you're saying goes into my next question, which it's basically coming from a personal level, this one. So, as you know, I'm one of the founders of Level Academy. I spent about 3 years pushing it to help the company to grow. The first 3 years of it, basically. I'm currently not active with the academy. Quite a few people noticed, other people asked, and the truth is, I got completely disheartened with the way things work out in Malta. At the end of the day, you need to make money to live. It was just becoming too much time, too many headaches, too many why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this work? So basically, I stepped back. Kevin's running the show. Just for everyone to know, me and Kevin are on good terms. Never fought or anything of the sort, just in case anyone's thinking otherwise. And he's doing a very good job at running the show. But so I can speak only from the behalf of the first part of building the company, not of what's happening presently. So we spent about 2 years having multiple events every month. So thanks to Sheba, a ton of sacrifice from Kevin, from my end, and also some help from Gaming Malta to run these local tournaments. So in general, we saw a big growth in players. We saw stronger and bigger and growths in communities too. We saw young orgs start, sort of like following the footsteps of Eversio. People like Valid opened up at the time, and a couple of others started to recruit players. So obviously players took interest in esports, started practicing to get into esports rather than just playing the game. People started forming teams, even if it was just between friends. People were playing the game more on a competitive level, more on that healthy way than just rather riding the wave like what we have now of just playing whatever is out. We also saw content creators, streamers taking interest in observing and casting and hosting and stuff like that. So basically we opened a lot of eyes in the industry on what they can work in and how they can get these jobs, how they can work towards these jobs, especially with parents. I spent over about 2 years going, just under 2 years going every 2 weeks on breakfast shows, because that's when I know the parents are watching, to explain what esports is and to explain the benefits of these things and how there are benefits to these things. But eventually we couldn't afford to do it anymore. It got very tiring. We weren't seeing anything at all coming out of it. The funds helped, but the funds never even covered the costs of the tournaments. We always had to get money out of our own pockets. So eventually we were spending too much money and too much time on this. So this is my question. Stupid us. We thought that trying to grow communities, breaking the stigma about games being bad and esports being different than just playing games, getting more players into the competitive gaming, we thought that was the way to go. Clearly, it was not. It didn't work. The numbers made us think it was working, but we're clearly missing something or we're dumb. So if the goal is to build communities, and we did that, and we had an active, very healthy community on a lot of different games, and it was very clear that when when the academy stopped doing these tournaments, almost all these communities died straight away. What is Malta looking for? So if we want to like build things up in esports, want to create jobs in esports, what did we do wrong? Why couldn't we get just a little bit more funds? Now, I'm sure you have an idea of what the academy got and what maybe other companies got. I have rough ideas. People talk. You could be able to calculate how much certain things can cost. So we really didn't ask for a lot. And I think we really, not to sound like I'm boasting, but I think we really did a good job in building the community in Malta and creating awareness, not to mention the educational schools, which I want to get into with another question, so I'm not even going to mention that, because that's even more disheartening. So we did a lot. In my opinion, we built a lot of communities, and when things like PlayCon came along, they always found the players. At the time when we were alive, when anyone did a tournament, they found the players. When Esports Plaza did tournaments, at the time they found the players, because we had tournaments running every week. We were building communities. We understood, or we thought, clearly it's not the way it's supposed to go, but we thought that if you build things from the lowest end and you get kids at a young age to play the game properly and compete properly, eventually you're going to have a healthy esports scene. Not to mention, we wanted to put this into schools where they can compete against each other the same way football teams compete against. So I'm not even going to mention what benefits and jobs those things could have created. I'm just going to mention we're building the communities, and somehow we couldn't get more. We couldn't get, and we weren't, like we've spoken before, we were never money hungry, we were never greedy, we were always asking for what we deserved. So whilst we're doing the work, we can at least cover the expenses and maybe make some profit and start making this thing profitable. But it never happened. Do you have any idea what people need to do not to say make the same mistakes we did?
It's a very good question.
Sorry for the rant.
No. It's a pity, because obviously I think everyone agrees that the level academy times, the bi-weekly tournaments, sometimes 3 times a week tournaments for different games, were kind of like the golden age that most people remember of the past few years, right? So it's a big pity that work.
And no disrespect to Gaming Malta, obviously, because they are the only people who helped us out. But it's very puzzling to me the way, like you mentioned before, certain
That's why he's
funds.
here today.
Jesus
That's
Christ.
why he's the
Sorry.
GOAT. The GOAT.
That's why I'm asking, like, because we've mentioned the funds before and how they're dispersed, and this is one of the things that always irritated me. We weren't a useless company just trying to get what we can to get some free job. We clearly showed that we were doing things right. So, like, what was it? What the hell was it? Because I can never understand this. I'll always keep on thinking about it.
He's got a point.
The truth is that first of all, it's quite hard for me to answer you, Locke, because for me to, I mean, I am in a similar situation to you. I mean, I've run a Versi for 17 years. Every penny that has been spent by a Versio, and it doesn't cost a small amount of money, is from my own pocket. I applied for funds. In my opinion, I had a very good proposal. I think what we've achieved in the past years, while the government was giving out funds, what we achieved on our own, completely on our own steam, was amazing. I mean, if you look at quite a few of the professional players, esports players that came out in the past few years, most of them play for us.
Let him cook.
And,
Let him cook now.
It wasn't our achievement, but it just so happened that Shaka, who became Malta's only Counter-Strike professional, was our player for around 5 years. We, at significant personal cost, we sent him to 3 or 4 foreign events. Imagine paying for 5 Counter-Strike players and to travel to events, including hotel rooms and flights, for them to compete, and you get nothing in return, literally, except the satisfaction that you made them an impact. Hido was also our player. I will never take any benefit out of the fact that he made it to where he made it, because that was completely on his own steam, and we played no part in that. But it doesn't change the fact that he was one of our players. Cupert was also one of our players for a short time in Valorant. Yet here we are, right? So if you ask me kind of what did we do wrong, honestly, I don't know. And that's honestly why I am so motivated to ask for transparency and fairness when it comes to distribution of funds. Because even if there's a very small pie to split, and there isn't a small pie because there's 2 million euros, right?
Yeah, that's why.
Like, guys, I don't know. Have it slightly fairer. I have zero ambitions in my life of making money from esports. Zero. So I just want that if there is government funding, there is a bit of equality in how it's spent, so that maybe if I'm going to be transparent, I spend around 5,000 euros a year on a Versio, right? Maybe instead of spending 5,000 euros, I spend 4,000 euros or maybe 3,000 euros. It's a lot to ask, because why should the government fund my personal hobby? They shouldn't, right? But if they are doing it,
But that's
right?
what I mean. Since there
Then
are
do it fairly.
funds for it, so to make it like clear, again, I'm not throwing shade on people who are getting help, because at the end of the day, I was trying to get the same type of help, and the same thing with MCL. MCL barely cost anything. It was cool, it was fun, it was healthy, and I found it like to be a very big shame that we have ESL in Malta, but we don't have Counter-Strike teams. It's a hassle to get teams whenever there's PlayCon. It's a hassle to get teams whenever there's anything Counter-Strike related. But when we were doing things regularly, because I could actually tell people, we're going to pay you something for the work you're doing. It was small money. That was like 300 euros each, and some people 200 because they had less work. So it was still something for months of work I'm talking about. So it's not a paycheck, but it's an incentive to say, all the frustrating days where I didn't feel like doing this and I did it for the sake of keeping the scene going, it's at least I have something for it, you know what I mean? Like it's nice to give that little bit of help. And I hate, and it was one of the things we had at the academy why me and Kevin never got paid for anything, because we always pay people. We always try to pay people straight away, and we pay well because we think what people deserve, we try to give it to them. So yes, the next question, in fact, you mentioned Aversio, and
But that's I want to say that here the role of the association is to try to push government policy towards catering for the needs of the community. And maybe the needs of the community is not to sponsor Reversio, maybe it's not to even to sponsor Level Academy or to help out. But I think we can all agree that, you know, having some community events here and there would benefit.
yes, it's
or having
100%. To me, it makes no
standardized
sense.
tournaments. So it's not even about giving myself getting money. But for example, even if I talk about the Multi Sports Association, I mean, if we had some money to help out with paying for flights for our national team,
Yes,
you know, isn't that worthwhile?
I have in fact a question to see like what gets covered and doesn't eventually. So I'll get to that. Back to the funds. What I was saying was like it's not about throwing the shade on the other companies, but at the same time, it's like what's going on? Why can't we get the bit of extra help when it's clearly that things are doing well? So you start to question, is this personal? Because that's what I thought for a long time, to the point where I spoke to our sponsor and asked if there's something personal, because it doesn't make any sense to me. And there's been information about the funds being public before, so we had an idea of what there is, and it's very puzzling to us. So it's completely disheartened me, because when you do so much work, you manage to start building things, and you say, you start a company, you don't expect to make money, man. When you start a company, you expect to be, you know, like for the first 2 years at least, you won't really start seeing anything coming in. So we knew it's going to be a slow start, and we knew the community in Malta was destroyed, and we need to rebuild it, because if you don't have a community, you don't have any lessons, you don't have anything on esports. So it is one of the main things that disheartened me. Like, why, if we're doing a good job, why won't we get the help? And you mentioned the Versio, and that's what I was going to bring up. In fact, I said, so first, like I was saying, you build the communities, then you introduce competition into the community, then eventually people and players will start wanting to improve, so they can either create their own team, join teams, join an org, get signed, whatever, like Cooper did. So there are a lot of ways it could go once you get competitive. So it's very important, in my opinion, that whoever is in charge of esports, whether it's MESA, whether it's Gaming Malta, whether it's any minister, that they give importance to teams. Because as soon as you have teams doing well, it's the biggest incentive for people to say, okay, how do I get there? And you learn that you get there with a lot of hard work and dedication, and it's not fooling around in front of the PC. So it's actually really healthy for players to take that influence and try to get into teams, basically proper teams. So you're the only registered esports team in Malta. You've been competing across all games. You're not a one game org or anything like that. This isn't recent. I think you've been going on for like 17 years. How long have you been, Nick? 17. So you get good results, especially coming from the tiny island of Malta with such a small pool to choose from. We've seen good results. I see you manage it well. Other traditional sports, like you mentioned before, some of them get paychecks, some get sponsored trips, tax-free trips, extra leave from work, more publicity, and all the good stuff. And to make it clear, I want athletes in Malta to make more money and get more publicity. I'm in no way or form shitting on athletes. I love sports, and I think it's just as important as esports, if not more, to a certain extent when it comes to health. So it's not in any way or form saying athletes should have something taken away from them. I wish that they get so much more. The more we pay our footballers, the better they fucking get. They don't have to do full-time jobs and then go to the ground and not perform as well as if you're doing full-time. So I hope that even in sports, things get better eventually in Malta. But the point is that this is a sport. They get all these benefits. Did the Versio ever get any recognized help when it comes to media? Like when you competed one week, did any mainstream media ever showcase you? And did you ever send packages of like news or whatever is going up, so maybe the media can mention something? And what you mentioned before, did you ever get money from anywhere in the government to try help you with this team? Because the way I see it is this: if we're looking at growing esports in Malta, having a professional Maltese team would be it would be really good, man. You know what I mean? Like having an actual pro team. So I would expect the government to want to help something like Versio grow, so other teams will be influenced, knowing there is a chance to make it. So, did you ever get any of the help? Did you ever get any mainstream? What's it called? Did you ever actually send yourself and it never got ignored? And if not, how on earth do you fund it? Sorry, long question again, but there are quite a few like this.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start. The first one was: did you get did any media reports on what you do? Mostly no. There were a few cases where, because of contacts of people like Leon, who works at Vibe, so he made it happen. But that was the only reason why we managed to get somewhere on mainstream media, because Leon is who he is, right? And they had the contacts. Unfortunately, I don't have those contacts. I've tried to make those contacts. I've spoken many times to people at the Times, for example. We even sent articles to the Times. And honestly, before I've been as busy as I am now. For example, every time we had like a player competing in a foreign tournament, I would send a media pack to all of the media outlets in Malta. So I would send like a write-up, a ready-made write-up with like a blurb on what is this tournament, what is this game, who is this player, what is this tournament, and then like a write-up saying, Malta's best whatever Tekken player is currently competing in Poland in this tournament. The prize is this much, blah blah blah. So like a short write-up, page and a half, or 1 page to keep it very simple. I would attach media. If we were lucky enough to make a video, I would attach a video. If we didn't have a video, I would attach photos, and I would send it. I had a list of all of the media houses in Malta: Love in Malta, One News, Net News, TVM, everyone I could find, Malta Daily, Vibe, everything and everyone under the sun. And I would send like this email. I never received any acknowledgement on any of these. Recently, because we and this is as MESA though, through people like, for example, Kirsten from GMR, who has better contacts than I do, we did, for example, speak to Vibe and Free Hour, and kind of like for us to understand what content they would expect us to do, and we do have like a pipeline of content that we send them. However, their point was like, guys, don't bother sending us content unless like a Maltese player wins an international tournament. Kind of, it won't sell. So we're in a situation where the only reason why someone would report on us if like a Maltese player wins an international tournament, which is kind of a tall order. Otherwise, they expect us to pay for any form of mention or something of that sort.
How strange, knowing that when the team of Malta even get a draw, it goes on every newspaper and there's actual celebrations for a draw. So they wouldn't understand that actually someone like, for example, fucking Cupert, who played for Cloud9.
Kate, I did everything. I even kind of like wrote like how like Times of Malta get like columns and like opinion pieces.
Uh-huh.
Which is basically just text or like an argument, an article about something. So not even news, an article about something, right? They acknowledged it. I sent one reminder. They said, yes, we're looking into it. I sent another reminder. We're looking into it again. The third reminder, ghosted. So I wrote like a 500-word article for nothing. And I don't want to sound defeatist but the reality is that news outlets will only report on news when it's worth reading for them. And the situation that we face is very common also. Like if you follow motorsport, for example, everyone in motorsport also complains, why do Times of Malta only report about football and never about motorsport? The billiards guys, the same thing. The reality is that news portals only report about things that they know are going to get clicks. And guys, let's remember, we have our own portals. We have things like Esports Malta and PlayCon, and with all due respect, no one fucking reads those things.
No.
And that is extremely disheartening.
what I wanted to tell you is, in fact, like part of the reason why I said like we should do this podcast is, I think most of the people in the chat and most of the people in the casino have something to do with content creation, streaming, communities. So I really like would like to advise anyone who streams or does content that whenever a local wins something, a local competes in something big, they don't even need to win, make a fuss about it. What I mean is like take an opportunity. It's going to give you 20 minutes of content on your stream. Talk about the people who made it. Talk about wishing this happens more often, because the more people putting out clips in our community on social media platforms, the more chances that Love in Malta will say, let's pick up the streamers, blah, blah, blah. So let's say Peshel, someone with a big name, had to talk about something like this. There's a very big chance it will get picked up by one of the media outlets, because media outlets are always looking at what the hell we're going to post today. So I'm hoping that the community, my community, the community of Kazin, like can help out in this way to try to let be the news. You know what I mean? We're not covered by mainstream media, but we are broadcasting very often. So at the end of the day, you can make content out of this. So keep a lookout on these pages Mick is mentioning, esports Malta and stuff like that, so we can promote these people, we can give them some light, and maybe that way, if enough people talk about it and enough clips go around, someone will notice it and start talking about it and create a snowball effect. So in other words, you didn't get funding and you fund this from your own pockets, in other words.
Yep.
All right, so this is a shitty question where I kind of hate to say it, but it's I have to ask it. So first of all, how can anyone in Malta expect any of our local teams to put Malta on the map? Because if there isn't help, it's very difficult to make it. You need some form of help. So if there is zero help, zero recognition, every player gets disheartened. Unless you're winning championships straight away, no one's gonna know about you. So they're both like they're ignored. I mean, both financially and on the media. So we can't expect any Maltese team to put us on the map. So when someone like Leonidas, for example, who is in chat, goes and makes top 13, top 8. It's a big deal because no one's doing this and it's very hard to do it. Now, even more than Leonidas, especially if you're in a team, because it takes 5 people to sync together, which makes it even harder than to go to the professional level. Not shitting on Tekken or anything like that. So my main question is this, though. This is the one which is a shitty thing to say, but I have to say it. It's very hard to get interested or have any kid get interested in creating any teams in Malta when they know the president of the esports Malta, the Malta Esports Association, cannot get help. If you can't get help, how on earth does a 16-year-old kid who has the dream of starting an org, Pulse, Valid, all these, how can they look at you and go, yeah, let's keep on doing this? Because if you can't get help, you're someone who's connected, you're a well-educated guy, you have really good ideas on how to move esports, yet you get no help. You've been doing it for 17 years successfully. I know a lot of players who played for Eversi on different games. They're all brilliant players still till today. So I'm sorry to ask it, but it's true. Like, how on earth can any young team get like motivated to do anything when they can see the president of the association doesn't even get help?
I mean,
you have a team who people have left tournaments because they find out Aversios joining. That's how high level your teams are, and people are shit scared of them. They won't even want to be destroyed by you. They won't even join the tournament. You don't get help. How on earth is a kid going to get any influence?
I mean, realistically, though, I think this is something that applies across the board for any hobby, any passion of anyone, really. I don't. I sometimes I think that expecting help is just an excuse of saying I can't do it. The reality is, for you to succeed in anything, you need to work extremely hard at it. And in 99% of the cases, you will only get support and people recognize what you do once you've made it. I mean, and this isn't unique to esports. I'm sorry, it's unique to it's the same thing everywhere, And again, let's draw a comparison to motorsport, and maybe this is why I keep drawing comparisons to sports, because the reality is that sports is by far the closest thing to esports that there is, right? Esports is closest to sport. Then esports is closer to video game. Then esports is close to video games. That's the reality.
I agree.
So if you look at motorsport, if you want to start, you need to shell out, I don't know, 6,000 euros on a cart. right? And then there is one track in Malta that you can drive in, and every person who's an enthusiast for motorsport in Malta wants to drive in that karting track, which obviously makes it very hard for anyone to actually get any race time. Then I don't know how much you have to pay to actually join the association to be able to participate in the tournaments. And then in the vast majority of times, in order for you to race abroad, you have to pay yourself, as in no one is paying. The government does cover a bit of funds for sports players, for actual sports players to participate abroad, but still it's a very small amount of money. This morning I was actually speaking to a motorsport enthusiast, and he told me kind of, like for a person to compete in a foreign tournament when it comes to car racing, you're looking at a minimum of 7,000, 8,000 euros.
But
The
some of
government
them
maximum.
get them through sponsors, because on cars
Wait.
it's much easier
Wait,
to
wait,
get
wait.
sponsors. Huh?
Fair enough. But what this guy told me was that the maximum that the government gives you in terms of travel budget is 400 euros. So you spend 8,000 euros to go, but the government helps you with 400 euros. Now we're talking about one of the most popular sports in Malta. I would say the second most popular sport in Malta is motorsports, probably after football, right? But this applies to everything. It applies to billiards. It applies to chess. It applies to anything that you can think of. First and foremost is your passion, and where you want to get to, and your ambition. That is first and foremost. Like, stop using excuses that you don't have support, you don't have whatever. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, in parts of Eversier's lifetime, we went inactive because there was bloody no one in the whole fucking island who wanted to actually compete. That is the reality.
I believe you, 100%.
So guys, come on. I mean, yeah, we can talk about money all we want, but the truth is, first there needs to be passion, and there needs to be ambition, and that's where we start from.
I understand exactly where you're coming from, Tan. I agree with you to a certain extent, but the difference I see is this. I'm not saying pay for a team to go abroad, for example. I'm saying if, let's say, in Malta you form a volleyball team, I'm not going to mention football, I'm going to mention volleyball or basketball. Popular, but nothing like football. You'll find tournaments to compete in, and a lot of these tournaments are funded by the governments.
Let me get you another story.
But they are funded, Mick.
Let's talk about basketball, okay?
All right.
The government spend millions, huge millions, to create this beautiful basketball court that the Malta Basketball Association has, right? As you might know, FIBA, the international body of basketball, basically organizes an esports event. And I said, kind of, let me go speak to the Basketball Association in case, we might do a kind of like a partnership with the Basketball Federation. And we have an eFIBA, that's what it's called, eFIBA competition team. And we're able to kind of get Maltese players of the basketball game, NBA 2K, to play in this World Cup of NBA 2K, basically. The guy at the Basketball Federation in this super fancy basketball court with offices, with a pool. I'm telling you, it's an amazing place. He told me, he said, dude, I would suggest that you take it all on your own. You can do it all kind of like, we don't want to intrude on. You can take it on your own. I said, I can't field 6 teams for a basketball league. How the bloody hell do you expect to field 6 teams for your esports league if I can't field 6 teams for a basketball league? Now, this is basketball, dude.
What? So, but is it maybe the type of league? Because there are a lot of people who play basketball in leagues.
I mean, I felt this attitude from, I think he was a secretary or something of the Basketball Federation in Malta, telling me that no one wants to compete in basketball in Malta.
It is a very similar situation to ours. They have the nice big ground, but there isn't the grassroots. So
no, we don't have the big ground either.
We have the money being spent on the big events. We don't have the big ground to play, and it's true. It's true. Yeah, it's better there. Okay, fair enough. So basketball is also going through this stuff, and it's a comparison to a traditional sport. And like I said, I agree. You can't say, I'm not going to start a team because there isn't funds. But we both agree that if there was the opportunity...
Listen, before this all started, before government funding ever existed, when I look at when Eversia started in 2007, right? I would say there were probably like 20 League of Legends teams, not in 2007, but let's say 2010. 20 League of Legends teams, 16 Call of Duty teams, maybe 8 Counter-Strike teams.
Yeah, I remember.
Teams existed. Nowadays, there's nothing.
No.
We can't blame it on resources, but
No,
it's
no,
not
no.
about resources.
No, I'm not.
It's
I'm
about-
not. I'm not going to blame it on resources for sure. As in, I have a question directly on what you just mentioned now, camera.
Yep.
I have a question directly on what you just mentioned now, basically. So we'll get into it, Jafir. Your call. You're good or no? Right. Let's give Mick a chance. There he is. All right. And yes, you can't depend. You have to do things. You have to start trying to build things. But the same way, like if you play in football and you make the team of Malta, you get your shoes paid for as a kid, and then when you grow up, you're getting stuff paid for. It's nice. It's an even bigger incentive, and plus, like I said, some sports you have leagues to join. It's a basketball. I don't know what league this is, and I'm gonna believe you, Jafir, that it's probably in a bad state also. But you do find, for example, charity events where people go as teams and play. So maybe there isn't the professional type of thing, but there are actually people playing the sport a bit. I want to get into this with education with the next question.
There's
now,
there's a lot of Maltese players playing Fortnite, but how many of them are actually competing in Fortnite?
And what do you think the reason is that they're not into competing when they could be? Is it because the game isn't a competitive type of game? Because most people of Valorant who play Valorant, most people who play Counter-Strike, they all think of team, compete, rank, these types of things. You know what I mean? Like get better sort of thing.
It might be that we perhaps need to face a bit the music that esports is not as big as we expect it to be.
In Malta or in general?
In general. Not in Malta only, but maybe
even though before, like you said, there were so many teams, it's not about the sport not being that big. The sport is big. It's something happened with the way people are approaching it, because there were all those teams.
No, I think there are problems everywhere in general. Like, for example, you look at Counter-Strike. There's a reason why Tier 2 and Tier 3 of Counter-Strike is mostly Eastern European and Russian teams, because Western European teams can't afford to get paid 300 euros, 400 euros a month and actually play full-time. But a Russian team can get paid 400 euros a month and play Counter-Strike full-time, but a Western European team can't. This is the story of Shaka, for example. Shaka was a professional Counter-Strike player. He was getting a salary, but the salary wasn't sufficient for him to move full-time. So when they asked him when his professional team, that was, by the way, a top-flight Belgian football team, so they had plenty of resources, they asked him to move full-time on a salary that is below minimum wage in Malta. Of course, he said no. He said, why? How can I leave my job, move to esports full-time, when I don't even get minimum wage?
Yeah.
The reality is that making it esports is very, very hard, and it's not very different to making it in most other sports. That's the reality.
Apart from football, as that most of them are really tough to get into, and if you're not in the first division or premiers or whatever it would be, you don't really get paid.
And the difference is that in a game, for example, like Counter-Strike, which is the biggest esports title, or maybe the second biggest esports title after League, right? Maybe there are, in the world, 50, 60 professional teams who get a livable salary. In football, you just look at Italy. Italy would have
a different monster.
100 professional teams on its own.
Yes. No, it's a completely different monster. You can't compare it. It's true. We need to look at the smaller.
We need to look at the smaller sports. The truth is, in the smaller sports, the situation is quite similar to esports. You don't get most chess players aren't full-time chess players, and chess is bigger than esports. Yes. I mean, arguable maybe, but
my thing is this, Mick. Like, why is there that much fuss on promoting esports and getting jobs out of esports, though, if it is pretty much impossible to get things done with esports? That's what I'm saying. Because if you're pushing on something, you're pushing on something. That's what I mean. If right now there was a giant push on the Volleyball Association, you know what I mean, or whatever it's called, like, I'm pretty sure there'll be a lot of incentives being done to get young players from schools to start playing volleyball, as in that's the way it happens, as in You start from the young kids and you start teaching them how to play or introduce them to the sport at an earlier ages. And I'm understanding you, Tajvir. It's completely right. There are these struggles in almost every sport. Unless you're in the top of the top or it's football, it's always a struggle. But at the same time, we're talking about like this booming economy that we can take advantage of in Malta, or at least help produce in Malta. So there are questions, you know what I mean? As in, we do need teams, we do need this incentive for esports to grow. It's pointless having Sheba jobs in esports and no one understands anything on esports, because that way you're just creating jobs for foreigners, so it doesn't really benefit the Maltese, and it's pointless having MESA, you know what I mean? You know, as in, with all the respect.
But that's again, I go back to that. One of the key points in MESA, and this is outside of maybe the bubble of gaming or of what we see as our local community, this is called lobbying, right? And the point of MESA is to lobby the government that if they're going to spend money on esports, at least do it in the right way.
Uh-huh.
And when people ask kind of like, why don't you do community events? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? The reality is that I can't do everything.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing that I've chosen to focus on is to try and do this, because this is what I think I'm good at. I'm not good at organizing events, but I can see what the vision should be for esports. I know how to build an economic model that could be slightly successful for a country, right? I don't, but I'm much less. I'm much less proficient at organizing maybe an event in the barbecue for my friends, right? I stick to my strengths.
And even time, now, and you shouldn't be able to take care of everything on your own because it's impossible.
Now that's the thing. If we had a big enough community, let him cook. Listen, this guy. Let him cook now. This guy takes care of the taxes. This guy takes care of trying to throw whatever a stone at the politicians' houses. Maybe they fucking listen to us. There's a guy for everything. Now, we're not there.
No,
we're not there, dude.
In fact, I want to get to what the association is made up of and how many people are involved in what departments, let's call it that. But I'll get to it. My next question continues perfectly with this because it goes back to funds, but this time it's a mixture of personal experiences and other people's. So in my opinion, there's nothing healthier than taking control and monitoring kids at a young age when it comes to games, whether it's for their safety, whether it's for them actually learning how to play. Like every other sport, you start at 6 or you start at 10, it makes a big difference in the player most of the time. So you learn how to play, you learn how to practice, you learn how to monitor your progress, how to be aware of what you're doing online, how you're acting online, your ethics online, being safe from scams, shitty people in general. Have a lot of weirdos online too, especially if kids are young. It's good because they just get trapped in thinking they know who they're talking to. They don't know who's behind the screen. Also, how to use your schooling to land you esports jobs. I want to work in that job in esports. Most of the time, you can do stuff at school to give you a head start to what job you're going to do in esports. So, teaching them the different jobs of the industry, these are all really good things. Sana, the academy, we gave lessons at St. Joseph. It was a really good experience for the kids, but for me personally, I'm saying it was an amazing experience. And we saw a lot of benefits. We saw a lot of ways of helping certain kids. We saw a lot of addiction in certain kids. So we saw and started finding ways to develop courses properly so they can really benefit. So this has its place in a school. We've also had ideas of doing things like collegiate leagues, the same way I have football teams of every school, they compete against other schools. We wanted every school to have a League of Legends team, a Counter-Strike, well, maybe not Counter-Strike, a Valorant team, games which will be allowed in schools of certain ages and so you could get school teams, a way to promote it and a way to make it fun and put it as part of curriculum, syllabuses, whatever. We wanted to push this, we wanted to grow this basically, and it was showing really good returns. And I don't mean that in money, I mean in success of what we're doing. Certain courses we gave, what kids learned, what the parents are telling us, the way they're using these skills on other things and they see improvements. Especially, for example, we had kids under the spectrum who we saw giant improvement because games is a nice way of getting kids to communicate. So it goes all over the place. We never got 1 cent help for any of this. We did everything. In the beginning, we got sort of like a local council sponsorship. But then when it got to the people who are actually in charge of esports, we proposed about 4 years or 4 years in a row. I'm sure Kevin is was still proposing till lately. And we never got 1 cent for any of this. And I did see that there were some funds for these things, and I knew that there were some funds for these things, but yet it never got anything. So again, maybe I'm stupid, but what the hell did we do wrong? And if there are certain funds, I don't know if you know what numbers there are, stuff like that, but I know that there were, and it is very extremely disheartening knowing that you're doing something good through games for kids, especially kids who are, for example, under the spectrum. You know, you have this happening, you know, it was successful in a school, you know, it's very beneficial, and you know, if you're wanting to build these sports, the best way to do is educate kids from a young age, because we have serious problems with addiction. We have serious problems with kids who all they know how to do is scream at the TV and quit every game they can. All you have to do is same thing like a football, man. If you go to football, you do something wrong, you get push-ups. You have someone coaching the kid. So eventually they go to play football in a bit of a serious way. People who didn't get coached normally grab the ball, play alone, never pass, because they're not used to the team mentality at a young age. We wanted to do the same thing. It's genuinely helping kids get into a better mindset when they're online. And plus all the things we did to help when it comes to online safety and stuff like that. So this to me was a win-win for everyone. Win for Malta because we got recognized in quite a lot of places in Europe for being one of the first people to do this properly. We had people who were founders of NIP who partnered with us because we're doing a lot of really good job. We had universities talking to us. So we got good recognition. We can't expect help from abroad, obviously. So this is happening. It's very beneficial. There are things like Playcom where they involve also education, but we never got 1 cent for it. We're doing something wrong. Or someone else is doing it and we don't know, and they got all the funds. I have no idea. And it puzzles me, and I'm sure it puzzles Kevin every day, because I cannot understand, and I will go back to the same thing. Nibqa' naħseb xi ħaġa għandu għalina. For someone who, if you don't speak Maltese, basically we think it's something personal against us, and for some reason, no, you don't get funds. I don't understand it. Now, again, I know what you were saying before, you can't stay depending on the funds, blah, blah, but this is something that is so new. The only place you're going to find it is in the States. In Europe, it's almost invisible. So it is impossible to just go up to people and tell them video games, that's what we're going to give your kids. You know how long it took to do it properly and get a good reputation doing it, especially someone like Kevin, who's in education, who could have probably risked his reputation because he's teaching, the other is saying teach through video games. He was 100% right too, and we're very proud of what we built, and I'm sure he's very proud of what he's still doing with it now. But talk about disheartening and wanting to stop doing everything, which is one of the main reasons why I had to step back. And again, I got myself a job in the games industry, which I'm sure the government helps out. And I am very happy where I work, and I wish there are more jobs like I have, which involve video games, of companies that come here and can employ Maltese people. But again, what about the small guy, especially if your benefits wasn't building communities, now it's actually education? Like, what do you think we did wrong? Why do you think we never got help when it came to education? What on earth is going on? Do you happen to know anything being like involved the way you are?
I think it's a big pity. I think education should always be the kind of like one of the cornerstones of whatever you do as a policy. And in fact, for MESA specifically, it's in our statute. Actually, there's like 3 pillars in our statute. One of them is education. We wanted to do things around, for example, also to elevate our profile, so to speak. Like big things that we wanted to do were things like, promoting the involvement of females more in video games and esports in general. Things like cyberbullying, anti-cyberbullying, not cyberbullying, and then like
Let him cook. Let him cook now.
Anti-toxicity measures, and basically trying to educate both kids and parents about how things should be done. Also, for example, specifically for esports, things like a healthy approach towards playing too many video games, because the reality is unhealthy that if you use it in front of your PC for long periods of time, expecting money to shower down from the ceiling, because you think that you're going to become the next Simple or whatever. It's not that simple, pun intended. So yeah, I think it's a big pity that I know basically what you were proposing. I know the vision that both you and Kevin had, that you wanted kind of esports to somehow get into schools, having also like things like competitions between schools, and that idea which happens in the States, but we're far from that reality in Malta. And that's also another part of the job of MESA, that basically we start slowly changing the how others see us, right?
Why would you say we're far remote from doing these things if it was proposed well and it could have just been done? Because we did it in one
Well,
school,
the
it
fact
started working.
the fact that it was ignored, so to speak, is proof that we're far from it.
Yeah, but what
because
the reason it was ignored, I'm really interested in. As in, like, was there a reason it wasn't good? It was this, someone else is doing
I
it and
saw
we
it.
don't know. As in, I don't
I
know,
saw
maybe
it and I
someone
thought
else
it
has
was
a similar
brilliant.
proposal. I don't know.
No, I saw it and I thought it was brilliant, right?
Thank you.
And if the government, and when I say the government, maybe not this traditional government, but I say maybe more on the side of the Ministry of Education, and that's, I think, one of the disadvantages of what we have, because a big
Yes.
part of the sports policy is pushed forth by Gaming Malta, but Gaming Malta is an entity under the Ministry of the Economy, and in Malta, ministries don't really speak that much. So actually, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that the education ministry, the economy ministry, thinks that esports is sports. The sports ministry says esports is not sports. Two ministries not speaking to each other, not knowing what the situation is, and here we are dancing in the middle like stupid idiots.
When it should be the opposite. There's no reason Gaming Malta should take care of everything esports on their own. There are so
But
many
there is
other departments that could be involved. The arts department could be involved in things like this. You have tourism, obviously, which is kind of sometimes as in.
And that's the reason also why, for example, our proposals relating to tax, just so you know, tax falls under the finance ministry, not under the economy ministry. So you go to one entity. That entity is a subset of a ministry. That ministry is responsible for that thing. Now, for you to have something that's going to impact somehow cross-ministerial decisions is, I don't know. It's very hard to navigate this bureaucracy. But I do want to say that as someone who tries to navigate this bureaucracy in other sectors in different countries, right? Part of my job is regulatory affairs in iGaming. So what I try to do is influence certain decision making in different countries, right? Is that as esports, we're extremely new to this. And I'll say it out loud. One of the biggest problems that we have is that the president of the Esports Association is not influential with the right people. The reality is, if it
But
wasn't
that's not
me,
your
but
job.
it was. No, it is my job. If it was, for example, instead of Michele Magro, it was Joseph Muscat, I can assure you that he would have brought much better results in terms
even
of
if it
influence
if it
towards
was
government.
Trump or Mother Teresa, of course, if you're an influencer, you're going to get more attention. But you don't, as in, these things aren't a popularity contest. These things are like school. These things are supposed to be like school. The higher your grade, the more chance of blah blah blah. Not the more popular you are. It's supposed to be that way. Unfortunately, politics has been a long time popularity contest.
But the sad reality is that lobbying works when you have someone leading it that is very influential. Now in esports we don't have that person, right? And that is a problem. Because you need a person, like if you look at, for example, the Malta Developers Association, the people behind that, the people leading that, are extremely influential people. The type of people that they go up to a minister and they say, listen, do X, and the minister will do X, right? We can't do that. We try to do it. I can't tell you how many formal letters I sent to ministers. I can tell you how many meetings I've had with ministers. where they either kind of disagree with us. For example, let's say the Ministry for Sport in 2019 was the first time that I applied as Project Diversio to become an official sports entity, to be recognized as sports. Since then, I've been waiting for that categorization to happen. We brought the Minister of Sports to speak at our launch event. Then we had a private meeting with him, and he said, yeah, I think we have to see whether esports is sports. Okay, so why did you come to our launch event and have a speech ready? Then we had like 2 other meetings, and then we heard nothing. Then I sent him a formal letter. Then I sent him another formal letter. Then I tried to speak to kind of a person who works within his directorate to try and say, listen, we still exist. I did the same thing with the Ministry of Economy. We had a meeting with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister and Leon, if Leon is in the chat, he would know.
I was there. I think
you
I
were
know
there.
Yes.
I introduced Leon to the Prime Minister,
this, yes.
and I said, this guy, he travels to countries out of his own money, out of his own pocket. He pays out of his own pocket to represent the country.
I was a
It's good
witness.
if he gets support. And the Prime Minister turns to me and he says, make sure that he gets the support he needs.
Okay. So basically, esports is a ghost. Everyone ignores it. I remember that. I remember that you had pointed out that he pays for everything in hopes that someone would say, like, take care of the guy, get some shoes, at least give him his tax back. You know what I mean? Make it tax free for him, Mr. Travis. I know it's disheartening. I was hoping that you would give me answers like, no, Keith, you're not understanding this. Let me tell you what you're not understanding. And you give me a whole new light. Like you gave me with ESL, for example. I have a better understanding of how it can be beneficial. Maybe like you're saying, and like I said initially, maybe it's not worth the money it's spent on it. But then again, I don't know exactly how much it is. But you did show me new things. I was hoping that these would have new things because I'm still puzzled. I still can't understand why we did all that with education and it worked well. And it's just there. It's just there, man. Like 4 different ideas that could really do well for kids and grown-ups. But anyway,
I think the reason is lack of involvement, like a lack of holistic government plan on how to tackle esports. And because esports is looked at from the economy ministry's perspective,
yes.
other sectors like education, like that when you have something that needs the buy-in of the education ministry, or needs a leadership from the education ministry rather than, because obviously the education ministry needs to go to all of its schools and say, listen, let's have an esports program. That doesn't happen. Yeah, so
it's everything is such a pity. It could be so much better.
And we used to say that Malta's biggest benefit was because we were a small country and therefore we were nimble in our decision making. Right now, I'm not seeing a lot of that.
No, not at all. It's a pity. It's a pity. We need more people to be employed by the government who'll have esports as their passion, and we need Shabba influencers on MESA board. That's what we need, and we'll get things to work. I think that's a better plan than submitting good proposals to help kids. I think just get influencers, get people employed by the government, so the people employed would know what esports is properly and try to maneuver it properly, and MESA will get a name because they'll have influencers. So, in fact, this question is, I tried to link them, and they're actually working out well. What are the odds of MESA ever having funds to distribute to the small individuals and small businesses who want to create anything which is esports related, gaming related, whatever? The next question was, do MESA get money to cover costs for any esports athletes going abroad that represent Malta? Obviously, we got the answer for that. It's a big no.
No. To be fair, we did get some funds last year.
Okay.
We did get 2,000 euros.
Good. At least something.
It did not cover our expenses.
But it's a start.
I mean, just to give you an idea, when we sent Ryukan to Azerbaijan, those flights cost us 700 euros. If we didn't send Ryukan to Azerbaijan, we wouldn't have been eligible to participate in Bali. So we had to pay that 700 euros.
Pay them. So wait. This is an important question. You said when we sent him, and you also said you get no funds. And
Yeah.
then you said you got 2K, but it cost 7K. Who paid the extra 5K?
Who do you think?
So you paid the extra 5K from your pockets.
Yeah. No, it was 700, not 7,000.
Okay. But still, you paid 700 euros from your pockets for another player to go represent Malta abroad. Don't you think that there is something completely wrong with that, Emma?
I think that's a rhetorical question, right?
As in, I get it, man. It's small esports, blah blah blah. But Jesus, man, 700 euros.
No,
and
wait.
you get...
That was only the first part of the story. The second part is even worse.
Okay, go.
Right? So then, when like a week before we were meant to leave for Bali to go to the World Championship in Bali, one of the Counter-Strike players had a collapsed lung. The tickets were already paid for, and obviously he couldn't travel. So we got a call from the the International Esports Federation. They said, and I told them, listen, we're one player down. I said, I don't know what we're going to do. Can like the Tekken player stand in for him? Can I stand in for him? They said no. You either send another player, or you have to pay back the entire costs, and you're disqualified from the tournament. So we would either have to pay like a fine of like something like 5,000 euros and get disqualified from the tournament,
Or get a player out there,
or pay for someone to fly to Bali.
How much
So
does
then
that
we paid
cost?
another 1,500 euros to send a player
Stop
within
saying
a
we.
week's notice.
You paid another allowance. Stop saying we.
But,
You're paying them. But this is what I
Yeah.
mean. Like, for whoever is listening, whoever gets any of these clips in government, like, I think it is a disgrace that this guy has to pay money from his pockets for someone else to go represent Malta. I think these are basic things. I know esports isn't big. I know it cannot generate that amount of money, but I think, all right, let me put it this way. If you had to say this on some foreign show, it would, it would make it embarrassing for Malta. So, and I get it that you would do this with a Versio and someone would tell you, listen, it's your team. No one's forcing you to do it. If it's expensive and you want to keep on doing it like a hobby, go ahead. I would get it. Okay, fair enough. You don't get funds. It's your personal team. But this we're talking about people going abroad to represent the country. So I don't get why the president has to out of his own pockets. As in, you might as well have this privately done, the association. I know it doesn't work that way, but no, I think it's quite embarrassing that
as I
you
said, to
have
make
to pay
things
this
clear,
money.
later we did receive 2,000 euros.
Which is a good start. At least it's
Which is a
somewhere.
good start.
Hopefully they see how much it costs and they tell you, don't exceed that budget, send me the receipt and we'll pay the receipt. Not give you funds. At least tell you, I'll pay when you give me the receipt, at least.
But if we want to get somewhere, the starting
Yeah,
point,
you need funds.
like the starting, not even funds. You need you need infrastructure, right? Esports will never get anywhere in Malta unless there is infrastructure, and infrastructure means that if it's the association and the association is pushing the interests of the esports sector, it needs a budget that allows it to operate in a consistent and manner. Mostly,
Okay.
if I die today, right?
No one can continue.
Who's going to continue it? Will there be someone who's willing to take over and push it ahead? That's the question. So that's one thing. But then you need other things. For example, and this is something that, for example, even the Rugby Federation struggles with. Now, rugby has been one of the most successful sports in terms of performance for Malta, right? But can you believe that for most of it, they didn't even have a premises where they could meet up and train, and not even train because they would need a ground. I'm not even talking about a ground. I'm talking about an office where they can store their equipment, where they can do their AGM, where they can do their meetings. They didn't even have that until a couple of years
Is
ago.
it because the country is broke? What the hell is going on? But isn't because you would expect, again, sports
I don't
teams
know.
to have this
I think-
certain...
I think what was very achievable like 50 years ago nowadays is very, very hard to achieve. So, for example, someone like, there's a federation for remote control aircraft, right? Which is, I would imagine, a very niche hobby, right? But they have a whole airfield for them that was given to them, and that's because they're a 100-year-old association, right?
Okay.
And there's 200 people in that association. Now, esports is even smaller than that, unfortunately, and that is why I keep on saying, guys,
but
we
it
need the
makes
numbers.
it makes it less expensive in a way, and the way it doesn't...
But like, imagine when I speak about infrastructure, I mean having the ability to, for example, have a small office where if you want to have your community meetings, right, like a meetup. I was speaking to a few League of Legends guys recently, and they said, like imagine if we could have like a viewing party for Worlds. Like imagine if we could, just meet up and have a chat, and also for us to have an AGM instead of having to do an AGM on Teams or having to pay a hotel to give us a hall, or to have, if it's not a small hall, we could have our own small LAN event, and have those community events there. But that's where I'm saying kind of we need the infrastructure, because if there are government funds, and if you make a very rough estimate on what we would need, it would be quite a small amount of money that we would need to actually maintain what we do in a sustainable and holistic manner. And
but there are 2 million in funds, man. For example,
and that's
so we're not talking about how many thousands are we talking about.
That's what we're trying to push for, and that's where, for example, the recognition as sports comes into play, because realistically, sports and sports funding is a bit more stable than esports funding. Ideally, we'd happen to both, right? But we don't know what there's going to be an esports fund in 5 years' time.
Yeah, and what are the odds? So this I don't know. You're the lawyer. You can tell me. Like legally, I have no idea. But what are the odds of, for example, funds being transparent?
I wish they were.
But isn't this something that by law things need to be transparent, or it's none of anyone's business?
I think
I'm genuinely asking.
Business.
I don't
know. We apply for funds, right? And setting aside kind of esports funds, we apply for voluntary schemes. Like there are schemes for voluntary organizations where for some like, for example, for me to go to an AGM of like the esports federation, we have to pay for it. I pay for it, and then we can get like a 75% refund.
Okay.
So, for example, earlier this year, I went to the European Federation's annual general meeting. It was in Poland. I paid the flight ticket. The Polish Federation paid for my hotel, so I didn't. There was no cost there, but I paid for the flight ticket. And let's say it was whatever, 250 euros, right? And then I need to apply to a fund to get 75% of that 250 euros back. To apply for that fund and to get the results of that fund, it takes you 3 months. And you need to produce invoices, bank statements. I also
it makes it's hard to from you.
But that's fine. That's fine. If there's bureaucracy to get government funds, that's fine. I mean, honestly, that's taxpayers' money, and you should respect taxpayers' money.
I agree. And there is less corruption. There is more
and
transparency.
Then the results of that. So if you go on the MCVS website, which is what we use to apply for funds, you will see that, for example, we got X amount of funds, and that's public. You can see what we got. You can see what the Billiard Federation got. You can see what the Parkinson's Federation got, and so on and so forth. Like everyone, what they get from government is published. It's publicly available, and I think that's fine. I mean, I think that's the way it should be. I'm in favor of transparency. Yeah.
Another thing that needs to be changed, for sure.
And for your previous question, I can't remember it. I didn't write it down. Wait, no, I don't remember. Sorry.
My question was about the odds of you getting funds from the government to distribute to businesses.
I don't think that's realistic.
All right, that's a very big pity, because in
I
my opinion,
don't think the government will let go of funds to give to an entity which is not the government to distribute.
No, what I mean is,
and honestly, I don't blame them for it, because I mean, how would they know whether I'm going to distribute them the right way, or I won't give them to my brother or my sister or my son or whatever?
Okay, fair enough. Yes, but that goes with everything. Al-Harsi stays saying every fund went. Al-Harsi stays saying the funds for pre-corner, they might, it is in their funds, and you can't stay speculating on everything like that. But
it's government money, so I don't blame the government. I mean, it would.
No, but
it would be great.
You can be fully transparent, Mamik. As in, when I got funds, for example, for MCL, if someone had to ask where did the funds go, I can show an invoice for every single cost we had and the invoice for the work I did. So what I mean is, I'm not saying the 2 million should go to MESA and MESA decide what to do to them. I'm saying if we have ESL, PlayCon, and the big events, you see how much you need to cater for those, and those get taken care of by other people like they are now. But for example, 300,000 goes to MESA because MESA are the people who know the community the best, and they can show us the numbers, and that way they can show us how they distributed the funds. And if anyone wants to audit you, it will be really easy to audit you because
Yes,
you
and
always
that's
have to show.
that's how the tennis federation and the football federation, for example, work as also.
No,
That's
this is
MFA and
this
the
is quite a
tourism,
common
the
thing.
tennis
So,
federation.
so if you guys got a cut of the 2 million to take care of small businesses, one, you're taking a headache away from, for example, Gaming Malta, from having to deal with people like us, small businesses, MCL, whoever, all the other small ones who want to do things but aren't doing anything because of the dead scene right now. So why isn't something like that happening if it's quite a reasonable good thing to do? You're taking away work from them and you're distributing the work. The people doing the work are a lot more in touch. You're a lot more in touch with the scene than anyone in government, for example, because you're involved in esports completely. So it makes sense.
We suggested this to
You
the
suggested
government.
something like this, all right. I think it would be perfect if you had, because I understand you can't be taking care of PlayCon and ESL. These are things that
Mind
are
you, when I say suggested, I mean written down in a 20-page
you
document.
proposed it, GP. All right, all right,
Yes,
all right.
not a conversation, a casual conversation
I
over
think it
coffee.
would be good.
Over
I think
a
it would be
formal
good.
document presented to the powers that be.
You know, Asaf, that would be the best solution because the big events will still get funded the way they need to, and they still keep on happening the way they do because, like I said before, they're fun, entertaining events. Beneficial to esports or not, it's different things, but they're entertaining, good big events, and a lot of gamers go and enjoy it. But the small ones need to be taken care of, and I really think MESA should take care of that. Like, I hope that this actually happens. So, Mick, from my end, I finished all my questions, but now I have another 8 questions left, which didn't touch up on mine that much, sort of. So these are from the viewers.
Quick fire questions. Let's go.
Not always quick fire, but not like the ones I gave you for sure. So the first one is give a sip chance. What's the secret? I know. So basically, I know this started off as a comical question, but you work. You're a father. You have family. You do freelance stuff. You have MESA. You have a Versio and other responsibilities also. So someone asked, like, how do you find maybe the motivation and the strength to do? What is the key to keep on pushing even though you're getting money out of your pocket, you're spending all this time? It is very disheartening, especially if it's disheartening for me, it must be extremely more disheartening for you. What's the thing that keeps you going realistically?
I'm very passionate about esports, and I've done esports for all of my life. So, you know, I started competing in tournaments when I was 13 or 14 years old. I'm 34 now. So to me, trying to see and help out to help grow the esports community is you know, a fun thing to do. So and about the time, I mean, honestly, it's just time management. There are things that you have to sacrifice on. Like, for example, I love single player games. I haven't played a single player game in a very long time. And
yes.
you know, I don't sleep much. I sleep 4 hours a day, 5 hours maybe. Yeah,
Bunch of
I mean,
dedication and hard work, basically.
if you want to do things, you can do them. I don't think it's ever an excuse, but yeah.
And it's a very good point. You've been doing this before there was even a dream of anyone helping you out financially, and you did it because for the love of it. Some people don't understand it. I won't understand it in esports, but I can completely relate with music. I play in metal bands. Metal isn't exactly the best way to make money, but I'd never stop doing it. I love it. It's a giant passion for me. I've spent many years of my life spending money on it and never getting anything back till finally then it started breaking even and I wouldn't have to stay spending from our own fucking paychecks. But I completely get that it's fully out of the passion, even though it can look crazy from the outside, especially if you're trying to do something as a business. It can look crazy, but still, it doesn't matter how passionate you are. You should never be paying all that money yourself for someone to represent Malta. So, second one. in your opinion, this one you can keep short because we really covered like a lot of this. I don't know if I even should ask it. In your opinion, what is the main reason hindering the growth of esports culture in Malta? Is there a main reason?
I don't think there's a main.
lot.
Yeah, I think things like TikTok, and we've always had these things. Like when World of Warcraft was released, most people are younger than World of Warcraft. But when World of Warcraft was released, so many people from the esports community, from the local esports community, vanished forever. Right when PlayStation 4 was released, that had such a big impact that it created a schism in the community. Like half of the people were playing on PC, half of the people were playing on PlayStation when it comes to competitive games, right? Then you have other entertainment things, like for example TikTok, that people today, like that's what they spend their energy on, or battle royales like Fortnite, which most of the time are not esports. They can be esports, but people play them to such a degree that if in the past they would have gone into a team in Counter-Strike and played, instead they're playing Fortnite. The reality is that there's I think esports, like most other sports, has ebbs and flows. So sometimes it's strong, sometimes it's weak. Currently it's going through a bit of a tough time, but if you're a real esports guy, you have worlds going on right now, then you have that Counter-Strike major, then you have this, you have that. You don't, honestly, if you're a true esports guy, you don't really care that esports is popular or not popular. You just like it for what it is.
Again, I'll go back to heavy metal. It's you don't care about radio time and shit like that. It's zero in your interest. And like you said, if you're really into esports, there's a bunch of shit to see all the time. So no, those people aren't missing out on anything. The next one happens to be similar to what we just spoke about, and I added something myself. So the main question is, what happened to the old community, which was way more active? Do you think we can make the community great again? And what I wanted to add on to this is, the most of the old community are like me. We're old. We don't have the time to play anymore, like you. My reflexes died a long time ago, so let alone even trying to play in a competitive in any way. So my generation are like expired. We just enjoy it because we enjoy it, but you're never gonna see us competing properly and stuff like that because it's just pointless. You don't have the time, and you don't have the same mindset either. Before, winning the Counter-Strike game used to be the most important thing of the month. Now it's not even the most important thing of the day. So those things change. But me personally, I think the young generation don't act the way we did because they're spoiled. I mean, they're spoiled for the choices of games, they're spoiled for the comfort of the online games, the online communications. They're entitled to praise pools, they're entitled to a lot of type of praises, when before it was just about meeting friends, it was just about showing your skills. And it used to be something enjoying to go out and actually talk to your friends, because you're not talking to people online every day and with messages on your phone and you don't miss anyone. Like I haven't seen those guys in 2 weeks. You go, you meet up. So it used to be a very different deal. But in my opinion, that's what it is. Spoiled for choice. Life got too good in the world of video games. So it's just a rotation of games. People don't really stick around. People find everything to be a hassle. We used to love taking our PCs and spending 3 days at a LAN, going out, getting drunk, coming back, sleeping under the desk. Nowadays, kids tell you, I'm not touching my PC and moving it from my desk. Completely different generation. I think it's being spoiled for choice. What's your opinion on it?
I think as I said, kind of like, I think generally esports has its ebbs and flows. I think right now there isn't a game that entices people. The biggest competitive titles are still very old titles. League of Legends, Counter-Strike, and Dota are all old titles. No other game has gotten close to that. Not even Valorant
Not close.
is close to Counter-Strike or League of Legends. And I think that speaks for itself. But again, like, I look at the Tekken community, for example, and it's so heartwarming to see, even though it's like 20 people or 30 people in Malta that are part of that community. It's so kind of like good and heartwarming to see that taking place. That you say, listen, why the hell do I need to think about esports as this massive thing in order to make it feel special for me? and make it my passion. And that applies to a lot of games, I think. And honestly, although, for example, there's no local scene for Overwatch, for example, one of the best DPS players in Europe is Maltese,
Yeah.
and no one fucking knows about him, you know.
I see, what a
So
pity.
I'm following the Overwatch Championship series, and I enjoy watching it. And I feel great that there's a Maltese guy doing it, even though he has zero support, zero help, but
It's crazy.
he's still achieving, you know. But
It's crazy.
I mean, he achieved it. He doesn't even know. I'm 100% sure he doesn't know MESA exists, right? But then that makes me feel responsible to say, listen, you know, what can I do to help
That's
this
it.
guy? You know, like stop waiting for people to help you and start thinking of what you can do. And that's why I wanted so much to create MESA, because I wanted to have this entity that that in this specific niche, which is trying to improve the infrastructure. I'm not here to organize events. I can't do that. And if someone else can, by all means. I can't get sponsors. I'm really bad at that. But
Don't
there
worry.
there are other things that I think need to be handled.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. So the next two, I'm going to join them together because they deserve to be joined. So someone said, Mesa, as far as I know, is run by mostly TOs and companies. So who's fighting for the players' rights? How can people with personal benefits be running the show? Isn't it obvious that things won't run properly if there is personal gain involved? I restructured the question so I can ask it better according to what we're talking about. So I found this to be a very interesting question. Is it a healthy thing or is it unhealthy? The fact that there is personal gain. So if you are in the association, and as in Level Academy was in the association, is in the association, so there could be personal gain. Now, clearly, Level Academy are not getting any personal gain.
I don't think there's a personal gain from the association itself, right?
Not the
Because
association. We're
we have
saying
no-
the
but
people in the association
yeah.
can get personal gain. So that worries who was the question. That
I think it's a-
basically the interest of the player is not being looked at because there's the interest of the making money which is being looked at. And the second question which I want to join with it is, first of all, how many people does MESA consist of? And I don't mean like members, I mean the board, like people who work and do stuff. And the question was, who is a waste of space in MESA? So I will translate that to, do you feel like maybe you have people who don't work, who don't do the voluntary work they're supposed to be doing, and if you had to get other people on board or more help, not something you replace anyone, that you could take MESA to better places and faster?
Yeah. Okay. So let me start answering these.
Go.
Shit. What was the first one?
That it's run by the companies. Who's
Yes.
fighting for the players' rights? If it's owned, if it's not owned,
no.
I mean, if it's run by
That is a very big problem, in my opinion. It's a very big problem that only companies are part of it, and that's why I've been trying to, hoping and trying to get more people who are not associated with companies. The other problem of that is the part that people only see the direct benefit, the money in their pocket. That's bad. But the other part that is also bad is that everyone, you know, if they have 2 hours of free time, you know, and let's take it from myself. If I have 2 hours of free time, I have MESA and I have Aversio.
yeah.
Now, in my case, both of them are non-profit associations, right? So both of them are kind of equal to me. But if it was a business, I would spend 2 hours on Aversio, not.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's
And
the problem.
It's human nature to, without
If-
wanting to pull towards yourself also. So
if as a president of MESA, I see an opportunity where I can make money, right? What am I going to do? Give that money to MESA or take it for myself, right? Or see how my business can benefit that. So that's I think one part of the problem. Now, with respect to who is looking for the players, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think I do look out for the players in the sense that some things that I mean don't need to be public, but I mean, if since you asked the question, I will mention. I will kind of.
Before you answer it though, to be clear about it, but you just mentioned yourself. You both things you do are non-profit. The others are profit. So whoever asks the question is asking, not about your intent. Like, I think everyone knows what your intent is, but like, how I'm gonna be as blunt as possible. How can the average player trust the Malta Esports Association, knowing that without wanting to, if you have the board are all made out of people who can benefit out of certain decisions, being human, you would probably pull towards getting decisions towards you. So, it's more about
I think you
companies
need a
who are
mix of both.
involved. But we know how you are, and I'm sure like who asks know that, and you pointed it out yourself, both of your things are non-profit, so I don't think the question applies to you. It applies to the company, like, so I understand what you're saying, but is there something that could change, or maybe the board has a rule where it has to be half and half, so you have an equal spread of votes, so it doesn't always go towards the money-making side of it, and it also goes towards the community or the player?
It would be great if No, it would be great if people who weren't associated companies would consider joining both the executive committee, so the entity that makes the decisions, or perhaps before joining the executive committee, join as part of volunteers, as we all are, right? So, but that would have to be the first step. That unfortunately, right now, we don't have individuals who are part of the association as themselves. And the reality is that, for example, the way it works, like as a corporate member, myself as a Versio, I get to nominate 5 members. I have 5 votes. Now to have 5 votes, but I need to nominate 5 members. So one is myself, one is Jandre, who everyone knows, one is Zelian, that everyone knows, right? So these are already the kind of like the key people, some of the key people in esports, but there need to be more. That's
more of them,
that's my point, right? The truth is, and I had to beg people to become part of the executive committee, because there was only myself who wanted to be part of the executive committee, Kirsten who wanted to be vice president, and then Chris Kakia, who is the treasurer, who was very happy to get into this committee. He's not a gamer, right? He's a lawyer who got into this business as a consultant, and he really likes helping out. And honestly, he's one of the unsung heroes in my view. Like most people don't know who he is, but he works so much behind the scenes, from everything like doing our taxes to helping us with opening a bank account, all of this mundane stuff, kind of that is not fun stuff, but it's what perhaps like lawyers like us are more used to doing, and that's still really important stuff that needs to be done.
And I'm hoping more people now will know about MESA and will help promote it more, so you can find more of these people, because to be fair, a lot of people didn't even know it existed. So
yeah,
I'm hoping.
So to give you a bit the impression, like our previous board, there were a lot of inactive people on it. There were around like 9 people, I think, on the board. And I said, after a lot of nudging and a lot of asking people to become active, I said, guys, if you're not going to become active, let's just do an annual general meeting and let's rehire the board from scratch, right? I opened up the vacancies for the board positions, and
we just lost. All right, wait. People... You repeat the last bit because you're crashing.
Oh, I crashed.
Okay, let me see. You're back ish.
Yeah, am I back?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. Repeat only the last bit. You were clear, and then boom.
Yeah, so as I was saying, kind of the old board was really inactive. After a lot of prodding, I asked people kind of become active, and when that didn't work, we reconstituted the board. We called for new elections. And unfortunately, almost no one applied to become part of the board, right? And I had to beg people like Kevin and Mario. I said, guys, please help me, because I need help. And that's the situation where we are now. And if you ask Kevin, he'll say, like, I'm only here because you begged me to, pretty much.
So you need serious help. You can't run this. You're running too much of it on your own, and you're doing a good job, but obviously it gets too much and you can't cover everything. You definitely need people outside of businesses.
Yes, it's a question that very, very few people are actually pushing for something to happen. And that generally is a problem. And we realistically, we won't get very far because we don't have the mass of members to make us influential, and we won't make it far because if I'm quite confident, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but I know that if I stop pushing, I don't think there will be someone to take my place, to do what I'm trying to do right now. And that's a pity, you know.
I'm quite
Like,
sure
we
there
need
isn't.
proper structures. We need
No.
proper structures in MESA. We need more people. We need more blood. We need subcommittees. We need like so many people tell me, I'm happy to help. Guys, it's not help that I need actually. It's people to drive. People to say, listen, I have this idea and I'm going to do it.
Mhm.
It's useless coming to me with an idea and tell me do this idea because I don't have time to do that idea. I'm doing 20 other things, right? We need people to say, yes, I'm going to do it.
Not just with a plan. People have a plan and already are take action to help the scene.
Ideas, we have a billion ideas.